The protagonist was just another fencing student, until he woke up one morning to find a strange calendar and a letter.
Warning if we don't protect the future, the world will perish.
This is how he started receiving love letters and strange messages, demanding action right away. When every line is a warning and every word is hope, it's not advice, it's destiny and handwriting. When tomorrow warns you of today, can you change it? Let's find out. This story begins in a dark forest where now at sunset, the main character named Jan Perkis dealt with a large wolf. But it was not the end, two more came out to him, their eyes sparkling, and he pointed a weapon at them asking who's next. The wolves immediately rushed at him like flashes of lightning, and decided to attack in a jump. But Jan was not that simple either. He prepared himself, and when they approached, he thrust an axe into the head of the first, and a sword into the second. After which he waved his arms and threw their bodies away. It was time for a surprise attack. Another wolf jumped out of his hiding place, but MC quickly noticed him and wanted to strike with a sword, but the beast simply grabbed the blade with his teeth. He ran to his fellow wolf. Dragging him along, he turned around. The wolf was carrying him straight to the mouth of the other, but fortunately he had a weapon in his other hand, and he hit the wolf with an axe, and the other continued to drag him along. He swung his head, hitting him against the tree trunk, and at the same time, Jan swung his axe and struck with all his might. So he quickly dealt with the wolf and was now free, feeling the presence of another monster behind him. He thanked it. A huge grey wolf stepped out of the shadows, a bloody rag hanging from its teeth, and he said that thanks to it, he now understands that the letter was real, so he no longer has a reason to let him live. Some time ago, Jan, a third-year fencing student, was very happy that the midterms were finally over, and that he had once again managed to survive in this terrible academy. He was so happy that he got drunk, and his friend Celine Hester, a second-year night student, said discontentedly that it was only the midterms that had passed. No need to exaggerate so much. He could still be expelled from the academy if he failed the rest of the exams. His drunk friend Lito Einstein, a third-year fencing major, told her to leave him alone. He was happy because he gave it his all. MC sat down and patted his knees, saying that even if he wasn't very good at fencing, he passed the exams thanks to his strong legs and horse-riding skills. Lito said that even if he managed to hold on, he would still end up as a security guard extra in a medium-sized city. After graduating, they hugged and started waving their arms and legs happily, and Celine sighed and said that she was glad they could be so carefree. But for her, every exam shortened her life expectancy. Jan happily said that they were in the best academy in the empire. After all, of course, it wouldn't be a cakewalk. The girl got angry and exclaimed indignantly, "Why would he even say something so obvious?" Responded with annoyance, saying that she started it. She decided not to develop this topic and asked, "They know that the first lesson tomorrow will be a practical lesson. In fencing they will get penalty points if they are late, so they should hurry home and sleep." MC sighed heavily and asked, "Why there must be a practice right after exams?" The girl said that it was not really that important. After which they all said goodbye. Soon Jan was already in his room. He swore that he would never choose morning classes again, after which he fell on the bed and fell asleep. Before his eyes he saw a battlefield littered with dead people, and in the middle of all this, in the distance he was sitting when a raven sat on one of the bodies. He turned around and stood up, and his gaze was stern. After that a rain of fire began, and he said, "That Delphorum is coming, they must stop it." In the morning he woke up from a nightmare and screamed loudly. It turns out that he has been dreaming this dream for many times, and Delphorum is something from myths. He chalked it up to a hangover and stood up, his gaze immediately falling on the letter on his desk. When he got closer, he noticed that the date on the calendar had changed, but he didn't pay attention to it, and decided to check what kind of letter it was. The entire sheet of paper was completely covered in writing, and he smiled nervously, thinking, "Whoever left this here turned the calendar over." Judging by the handwriting, it was written by a woman, and when he saw that it was a love letter, his heart started beating faster. He was very happy and thought that he would be late for class, but to be polite he would quickly read it.
In the letter the girl wrote that she thought it was a failed story,
from a fairy tale she read as a child.
And sometimes she still thinks that it was all a dream, that their names were engraved on the pages of this book.
He sat down and thought that she had such beautiful handwriting.
The letter also talked about a raid,
some kind of hunting festival,
demonic beasts and practical lessons.
She also wrote that she would see him in a dream tonight too. She signed it, her name was Cephia,
and she wrote it in the year 571 of the imperial calendar,
on the 5th day of the month of Bao.
He was very upset, and looking at the calendar,
he thought that he had been deceived. Even the dates did not match.
It did not look like even the slightest effort was put into this. He told Sophia that if she was going to do something like this,
she needed to prepare more thoroughly.
And there was also a vague part at the end.
If we do not protect the future, the world will perish.
He was very disappointed by this and simply crumpled the letter,
deciding to hurry to class and threw it in the trash, thinking who would write him love letters anyway. When he arrived at the academy,
he discovered something strange.
Everyone was staring at him and calling him crazy,
and for some reason he had an axe on his belt. He got really nervous, not understanding what was going on here, and when he saw his friends, he immediately called them. Seeing him, they quickly turned away and pretended not to hear him.
Leto leaned over to the girl and told her in her ear to ignore him. Let her just pretend not to know him. She whispered that it was obvious she didn't want to be dragged to strange places again. MC called them again and asked if they could even hear him.
Celine shuddered and his friend smiled nervously, and noticed something. He immediately started looking him over from all sides,
noticed that something was wrong. Today he was different from yesterday.
Jan called out to him discontentedly, and said that he was in no mood at all now, after which his friend with tears in his eyes, threw himself into his arms, and exclaimed that the evil spirit that possessed him
had finally disappeared. He didn't let him get close to him,
and asked in bewilderment what kind of nonsense he was talking about.
Celine said that something strange had possessed him this week, and he smiled wryly,
saying that the last thing he remembered was saying goodbye to them.
It was last night, she exclaimed in irritation. So he doesn't remember anything.
Leto said that he had treated them like servants this whole week,
and now their reputation is ruined. They would have brought him to an exorcist if he hadn't threatened them with an axe. He took the axe off his belt and asked,
"Is this what he was talking about?"
They immediately moved away from him to a safe distance, and Celine asked him to put it away from them. She was having traumatic memories.
Their words made MC seriously think,
what kind of spirit possessed him? And did something really happen to him?
Although he doesn't remember being near any dangerous places or objects,
could it be related to the nightmare he had?
Leto said that he was glad it was all gone anyway,
and the girl agreed with him,
noting that it was fortunate that it happened before another incident happened.
He nervously asked if he had done something, and she told him that he had done something really crazy. He had defeated the best second year,
the youngest aura expert and the one who was called the monster, swordswoman of the second years.
Syria Yadina. He,
of course, didn't believe their words,
and thought that they were just joking with him.
But it was different. Celine asked him why he was so surprised.
He had sent her to the hospital for a whole week. He exclaimed that it couldn't be.
What kind of evil spirit had entered his body to do such a thing?
She told him that she had no idea,
and asked what he was going to do about it. He didn't understand what she was talking about,
and she said that today was a fencing lesson where he would meet her.
Because of this, Jan became very nervous, and from the crowd of other students,
a girl stood out who had been watching him all this time.
The contents of the first love letter to my beloved Jan Parks.
I wonder if there is an eccentric who doesn't like spring. I heard it in the capital of Erin Court some time ago.
You were a mature gentleman in stylish clothes,
and your eloquence and calm appearance impressed me.
Now that I think about it,
I suppose you must have worked for an aristocratic family.
Last spring you said you were just wandering aimlessly, but your smile was as warm as the spring sun.
It must be because winter has come to an end.
This was the first part of the letter Jan was reading this morning,
when he was possessed by an evil spirit. According to his friends, he made Saria crawl around the arena in front of him for a sword, which he constantly knocked out of her hands. She rose on trembling legs and said that it was simply incredible. Before he could not hold out against her for 10 seconds, he didn't let her finish, and said that what was incredible was her mediocre swordsmanship. After that he hit her in the face with all his might, sending her flying several meters away. He didn't even give her a chance to get up and struck her again, this time in the back while he was throwing her from side to side. The other students became nervous. Wasn't Saria the strongest? Even for 4th years and Jan had defeated someone like her. The girl found herself lying on the ground again, and he walked up to her ordering her to look at him. Didn't she find this at least a little suspicious? She tried to move at every little opportunity he gave her, not even realizing that it was a trap. After that he struck her again. And now standing in the arena opposite her, he wondered why he was drawn to fight her. Of all people he could have sorted out these problems, if he had at least fought someone he could defeat, but he was going up against an invincible academy student. The girl took out her sword preparing for a fight, and MC's friends advised him to stop before it was too late, and surrender because of the fight a week ago. Saria lost her authority among the students. Now they mocked her for losing so pathetically. But she still won't accept it. Professor always covered for her because she is strong, but this incident completely hurt her pride. Even they would be ashamed of this. Her face darkened but she did not respond to their words, after which the professor ordered everyone to be silent, since the fight was about to begin. He reminded the participants of the duel, that this fight serves as a substitute for their lesson, so this will be reflected in the grades. Jan smiled nervously and already began to scold this evil spirit. He should have at least sorted out his affairs before disappearing, and he just ran away after doing what he wanted. And what should he do with it now? She's a top student, so losing a few grades shouldn't hurt her. But if he fails this class, he'll end up being an uneducated loser living with his parents. He decided to pull himself together. He just had to hold out until she took it out on him. 10 minutes should be enough. Before the fight could even begin, she was right next to him and threw a punch at him, sending him flying high into the air. A few seconds later he fell to the ground with a thud, and thought there was no chance of holding out for 10 minutes. He'd end up in the hospital within 1 minute. Still, if he gave up here, this girl would never accept it. So he had to hold out a little longer. He barely got up and asked if it was his turn now. She told him to do as he pleased and he charged unexpectedly. He jumped high into the air, his body somehow feeling very light to him as he swung his sword. He wondered what had happened during the time he couldn't remember. His body moves exactly the way he wants it to. Looking at his lunge, the girl smirked. Then her silhouette blurred from the high speed, and she jumped to the side. Parrying his blow and counter-attacking, she easily knocked the sword out of his hands, and then delivered another blow that made him fall to his knees. For a moment he thought that there was a very real way out of all this, but it was impossible. Siri approached him and asked if he had shown him that gap on purpose, but last week he brushed it off so easily, as if he was just playing with her. He got to his feet. All this was already starting to irritate him quite a bit, and he told her to shut up about the last time. He would go crazy if he heard it again. She also began to get angry, and asked whose fault he thought it was that she became a laughing stock. She lunged at him with all her anger, and he raised his sword going to block her blow, and realized that his kinetic, visual memory and reaction speed had improved. He decided that he should be her match. But as he was about to block the blow, she flipped in the air, tricking him, and attacked. Her blow threw him to the side, his back hitting the wall. And as he got to his feet, she lunged at him again. He concentrated and thought that she would hit from the side, and then from behind he missed the blow and she attacked, throwing him into the center of the arena. And as he got up he thought that the next blow would be from the front. She attacked again and he, holding her sword, thought that maybe it seemed that way to him, but in reality it was a continuous onslaught. It was excruciating, but somehow he held on. She threw him back again, and he leaned on his sword to get up and thought. Why was she making so many unnecessary movements? She told him not to rush her just because he saw an opening. He should assume it was a trap. Wasn't that what he told her last week? That was why she asked for a rematch. But now he was fighting terribly. He tried to catch his breath, and she pounced on him in a rage, asking if it was time for him to take her seriously. Looking closer, he finally saw something. While his strength had certainly increased, it was not the same as last time. Thanks to the instructions he had given her last week, she was making more unnecessary movements. Now he could see the movements she used to distract him, and the ones she used to attack. He had successfully repelled her attacks several times, and thought that he had fought her equally for long enough. If he retreated now, she would not be able to respond. She was glad that he finally became serious, and raised the sword above her head, saying that it was time for her to show him what she had hidden. He looked at her sword, and thought that this was the perfect moment to lose the duel. He missed the blow on purpose and fell. And the professor said that if he didn't get up in 5 seconds, then Surya would win while he was lying there. He thought that the obsession, the duel with the best student, these were the most incredible things that had ever happened in his life. The professor started the countdown, and he continued to think. Still he did what he had to do to make amends. Now he would become an ordinary person again. But the girl was not going to let him go so easily. She noticed that he missed the blow on purpose now, and told him not to think that he would be able to solve it like this. She would ask for another duel if he ended everything like this. Even if he refuses or skips the class, she will challenge him again and again, until he feels the same humiliation she went through. Because of this, MC still took the sword and started to get up, thinking that he is now trying his best for something that is not even saved in his memory. Is she taking him seriously as her arch-enemy, just because he made fun of her for a week? The professor said that if he wants to refuse, then he should do it now. But he refused, and he announced the continuation of the duel. They both prepared for the fight, and the girl said that they can't just leave it like this. He meanwhile smiled. He thought that he can't run away now. Today he is going to tear her pride to shreds again. As soon as the professor gave the signal, she rushed towards him, raising her sword above her head, and he frowned slightly. He saw all her movements, and grabbed her sword and held it in one place, making her very surprised. After that, he took the sword with his other hand and pulled it towards him, telling her straight to her face that she was caught. It was time to reveal the second part of the first letter. Every time we think about what we had achieved, protecting the world and becoming heroes, I would have considered this a common and glorious history of their fairy tales, like the ones we all read as children. And sometimes I still think that it was nothing more than a dream, that our names were engraved on the pages of this book. It's all thanks to you know. It's just like you said, maybe it's thanks to all of us now. Jan stood in the arena and tried to catch his breath. During that last clash he could clearly see the movement of her sword, and he managed to dodge it without any problems. Just had to focus. He glanced at the girl who was ready and now watching his every move, and in his mind, he told her to attack so that he could completely destroy her pride. It was as if she heard him thinking about the fight, and his gaze began to follow the wooden sword. His eyes widened in surprise. He could see the path of her sword and the moment of the swing. She would approach, jump up, and then swing her weapon at his shoulder. Everything happened as he imagined. She jumped up, raised her sword over her head, and then he grabbed her weapon and said that she was caught. With a wave of his hand, he threw her sword aside and she excitedly ran after it, while he raised the sword over his head and said that it was over. Seeing this, she became very scared and immediately covered her head with her hands, preparing to receive a blow. This made him stop. He looked at her in surprise and wondered, is this really okay? Why is he settling a matter from a week ago? This will not solve anything. Rather, this situation will just happen again. It is not about winning, it is about understanding the current problem. Instead of the sword, he hit her forehead with his finger, which made the students very surprised. But even this action hurt her pride, and she exclaimed, why is he doing this? Is he mocking her again when he already won? He asked why she was trying so hard to win.
and she clenched her teeth shamefully, stating that it was because winning was everything. If she lost she would become a laughing stock. Realizing what was going on, he smiled and asked if it really mattered that much what others thought. Losing one match wouldn't change what people thought of her much, and no matter what others said, the effort she put into honing her swordsmanship wouldn't just disappear with the snap of her fingers. She agreed with him because he was right. But there was still something bothering her. He said that of course being laughed at hurts. But if everything she had worked for until now, if all that effort suddenly turned out to be meaningless,
wouldn't it be unfair?
She smiled sadly, and he said that he had always lost in this academy, so she should believe him. When he said that, there was no point in taking other people's selfish words to heart. Even if she lost one day and others laughed at her, nothing would change through his words. She realized that she had unknowingly convinced herself that her sword was useless. Even though she had built up this swordsmanship with self-confidence, she had learned a lot. She smiled and bowed slightly to him in gratitude, and the students began to discuss everything. They were very surprised that he had defeated the best second-year student twice. And the professor meanwhile smiled widely and declared Jan the winner of this match. He left the arena. And Syria thought that from now on she would follow her own path, no matter what others said. Just like her mentor Jan had taught her. But things don't always go the way you want them to, and the same thing happened to Jan. He wanted to hide the matter, but instead it caused a stir. Now whenever the other students saw him, they would immediately start whispering and discussing him. Rumor had it that he was the same demon that almost killed Syria the first time and then forced her to admit defeat. The second time they decided to stay away from him, and he listened to them, and said that he didn't win because of his strength. In his mind he added that he only won because she didn't show what she was capable of. Of course it was true that his mana detection and aura detection had increased significantly compared to before, but no matter how many unnecessary moves she made, if his skills were worse than hers, he wouldn't have stood a chance. What even happened to him that week? He didn't remember. He paused to concentrate and Celine touched his shoulder, noticing that he had a thoughtful expression. She asked if he was trying to remember that week again. He greeted her and Leto peeked out from behind her, asking with annoyance if he couldn't see that he was here too. MC ignored him and answered the girl's question by saying that he was still trying to remember it. After all, he still didn't know why he was possessed. She happily said that the saint in the cathedral said that he was fine, so she was sure he had nothing to worry about. But he didn't really believe it and sighed heavily, noticing that there were strange rumors going around about him. She exclaimed, "Who cares about stupid rumors anyway? They can't even be called bad." He used to be looked down upon as a low-ranking noble, but things were different now. It irritated her every time she heard him called handsome, and then said that since he was a country noble, he wasn't that attractive. He noted with a smile that it still meant that they liked him. She stepped on his foot, silencing him, and said that thanks to him, even high-ranking nobles stopped treating them badly, because they were afraid that he would crush them. "By the way, is that rumor true?" Almost crying from pain, Jan asked. "What rumor?" "Lately there have been a lot more than one or two rumors about him." Leto told him that. "They said that Syria has been following him everywhere since that day." Celine was already starting to get angry, but MC had known about it for a long time. He told his friends to look to the side, but not too obviously. They immediately turned to the side he was pointing, and it turned out that Syria was hiding behind a tree, and had been watching them all this time. And she had a black mask on her face. Leto smiled wryly and asked if she really thought that this disguise would work. Seeing this, Celine got really angry and was about to go beat her up, but the boys didn't let her move. And she exclaimed, why was she following Jan? Doesn't she remember how he beat her half to death not long ago? Leto asked how long ago she started following him, and he told him about 5 days ago. And it irritated him so much he was going to go crazy soon. Celine pushed him forward with her foot, telling him to talk to her before she went completely crazy.
He sighed heavily and headed towards the tree, while she confusedly thought about what to do. She should ask him as soon as possible. Her thoughts were interrupted by Jan, who came up to her and said that he noticed that she had been following him lately. Maybe she wanted to talk about something. Shocked that he had revealed her identity, she took off her mask and exclaimed, "How did he know it was her?" He meanwhile was at a loss. Did she really think that this disguise had a chance? Gathering up her courage, she closed her eyes and sheepishly said that she wanted to ask him for mentorship, because she wanted to become stronger. He was slightly surprised that she was more polite than she had been last week, and wondered what he could teach her. If they were talking about morals, that would be a different story. He can't teach something to someone stronger than him. But more importantly, he finally had his normal life back. He really didn't want to get involved with her. Despite her pitiful face that was begging him to grant her request, he refused her with a smile. She was shocked by his refusal, reminding him that he had defeated her twice before, and he justified it by saying that it wasn't because of his skills or anything. She had simply let her guard down. Honestly, the only reason he won was pure luck. He was about to return to his friends, but she ran after him and exclaimed that luck was also a skill. If he couldn't do it for long, then at least until the hunting festival. As soon as she mentioned this event, he immediately froze in place and remembered that ridiculous letter. I mentioned the hunting festival. That year during the hunting festival, many accidents happened. Emma from the alchemy faculty went to collect medicinal herbs when she was suddenly attacked by a mysterious monster, and her body was found in a very deplorable state. He began to suspect something, and in the meantime, Syria said that of course he had no reason to help her, but he did not let her finish and said that thanks to her, he remembered one thing: if she wanted to become stronger, then she should address such requests to Professor Derek, and not to him. He ran past his friends who were waiting for him on the bench, and Leto, noticing this, asked where he was suddenly going. Did he sort everything out with her? He ran on and said that it was not so at all, but he remembered one important thing as he ran. He thought that, to be honest, he did not believe anything that was written in that letter, but he was worried that it mentioned his friend's name. He had to see for himself that she was all right, and also that perhaps he had received a letter from the future. Emma, meanwhile, was sorting out some alchemical flasks, and he thought that a nerd like her would surely know about it. Now it was high time to reveal the contents of the third part of the first letter.
I had grown accustomed to life in Erincourt.
I was worried about what would happen when I crossed the desert, where there was only sand. But even that was home to many people. The sun was warm and the sea sparkled under its reflection. Have you heard the old saying,
If you look through the eyes of a fairy,
you can see hidden treasures? Everything was like that there. And writing a letter to you had also become an important part of my day. Some time past, Syria was practicing her sword skills. She swung it a few times, showing some good moves, and the professor praised her, saying that she was almost there. If she continued to train hard, she would be able to create an all-round aura by the hunting festival. She put the sword away and thanked him in a reserved manner, and he laughed and said that he never thought that she would ask him to teach her. She happily told him that it was her mentor John who advised her to do so. The professor asked in surprise, was that true? She realized what she had just said and pulled herself together, saying that she had to go. It didn't look like there was anything else he could teach her. He smiled nervously and thought that she was still lacking in social skills. But before she left, he called out to her and told her there was no need to rush. Even that guy had only managed to get second place in the hunting festival. In her second year, she turned to face him and wanted to give him back, and Derek remarked that it was rather strange for the professor to ask her to take her time when she was so eager to improve her grades, but he would give her a hint. Since it was her first hunting festival, she needed to get acquainted with the terrain
and the monsters of the southern forest.
Since the festival would be held there, he was sure the upperclassmen had already done that. She wondered if there were any strong monsters there. He told her that she would hardly meet one near the entrance, but once she got halfway through the forest, she would suddenly start seeing really strong monsters. She said that she would try to go deeper next time, but the professor advised her not to go too deep alone, although students can handle most of them. There are records of terrifying monsters appearing more frequently as the hunting festival approaches. Time passed during the creation of the world. The sky god Ares was born along with the light, and along with the darkness came the evil god Alamos. The sky god created the universe along with the flow of time. So there was a law, according to which time flows from the past to the future. If this law is reversed, the world will be plunged into great chaos.
So the sky God preserve the order of time,
placing a few restrictions on it. Therefore, if there is any being capable of challenging this order, it must be an enemy of the sky god, a being of incredible power. Someone like Delphram. Now Emma told her friend Jan all this. She asked irritably, did he understand everything now? He waved his hand and told her that he still didn't understand anything, and she stretched and said that he already woke her up, even though she hadn't slept a wink all night, and demanded all this explanation from her. Not only that, he also barged in and slammed the door, and this was after he hadn't seen her for a month. On top of that, he then said some nonsense like he was glad she was okay. He really needs to learn some common sense. He always loses the thread of reality the moment he starts concentrating on something. MC asked her to do him a favor since they were friends, and she asked with a grumpy face, "Are they friends?" Even though he only comes to her when he needs to know something, he folded his hands in pleading, and said that he understood that he woke her up, but isn't she angrier than usual? He got nervous and apologized to her, asking her to explain it to him a little more simply. She pointed out that at least he knew how to apologize. She agreed to tell him the gist of the matter once more. If he was trying to go against time, then obviously he needed immense power. And there was only one creature in the world with such immense power. That creature was Delphi-Ram, the servant of the evil god. He asked. So she was saying that the letters he had received were sent by him. She paused and then, disappointedly, remarked that he seriously needed to learn common sense, and he exclaimed, indignantly, that he had drawn such a conclusion from her words. Emma said that if she had to name a name, it would be Delphi-Ram, but how could a mythical creature, whose existence they were not even sure of, do this? He asked. Maybe this was the work of the evil god. She replied that they did not know if he existed either, and he awkwardly scratched the back of his head, admitting that she was right. She took some test tubes, and said that it was impossible to receive a letter from the future. Anyway, he should go back to his room and make sure it was safe. Jan, meanwhile, was thinking, wasn't she being too harsh, treating him like an idiot just because he said something crazy? On the other hand, he was crazy. He actually believed that he had received a letter from the future. Emma remembered that she had something for him, so she gave him 2 test tubes. A presence-erasing potion. It was a new product, so he should try one and see if it worked. He took it excitedly and asked if drinking it would make him invisible. She told him that it wouldn't make him invisible, it just erased his presence. He didn't listen to her until the end, uncorked the test tube and drank the potion right away, and she ran up to him and exclaimed, "What is he doing?" The taste of the liquid made him squirm in displeasure, and she exclaimed angrily, "Why did he drink it all at once? Did he even know how much it all cost?" For this she punched him right in the eye. But he paid no attention and asked. All he had to do was test whether it worked or not right. Let her come up and try to close her eyes for a second while he hid. She agreed because the more test results, the better, after which she came up to him and said that she would close her eyes and try to feel his presence. After that he felt something himself. It is difficult for him to put it into words, but even he himself cannot feel his own presence. If he can keep silent while hiding, it will give him a huge advantage during the hunting festival. He started waving his hand next to Emma's face, with a mischievous smile. But then she suddenly grabbed his clothes and pulled him towards her, and he exclaimed in surprise, "How did she know he was here?" She threw him away from her and said with displeasure, that it was not that at all. She hadn't even thought of that. He asked her what she meant and she exclaimed, it was all because of his scent. She couldn't feel his presence. But his scent was still there. Everyone had a unique body odor that they couldn't smell on their own. She hadn't thought of that when she had experienced it herself. He wished her luck with it and headed for the exit, wondering why he even bothered to worry about her, when she was insanely strong. She folded her arms over her chest and asked if he was leaving already. He said with a smile that now that he knew she was okay, he would drink another vial in the forest and report back to her. His face instantly became serious, and he told her not to go into the forest alone, until the upcoming hunting festival. If she really needed anything, she should call him first. His voice became hesitant. He told her that he was so worried, because he heard that the monsters there were acting strange lately, to which she just smiled and asked, is that really true? Apparently. Now was the time to get some benefit out of him. He said that since he was free, he would do her a favor in return. Evening came. MC came back to the room and read another part of the letter. He crumpled it up and threw it in the trash, exclaiming, who keeps sending him these letters anyway? He already warned her not to go alone. So he thinks she will be okay. At that moment the door swung open loudly and Leto ran into the room, exclaiming in displeasure. Where did he run off to this day? Thanks to him he had to calm down. An angry Celine Jan sat on the bed and said that he came just in time. It was all him, wasn't it? He ran up to him and exclaimed, does he know how much Emma makes fun of him because of his letters? Leto didn't understand what letters he was talking about, but asked how Emma was doing. And he sighed heavily, telling him to forget about it. He fooled him this time. But let him not write to him next time about someone's death. That was too much. Leto didn't understand at all why he was angry at him now, because of some incomprehensible letters, but decided not to focus on it. And asked how Emma was part of the letter that he threw away, just wrote about Emma's fate. And MC told his friend that of course she was okay. Could it be otherwise? But now everything was exactly the opposite. She was lying by the tree. And what was described in the letter happened to her. Now is the right time to find out the contents of the fourth part of the first letter. At first I was a little skeptical about the fact that you asked me to send you a letter. Once a month, I mean. It's you, Jan. But I also felt my heart beat faster thinking that you, who always smiled silently at me, miss your beloved when you had to send me so far away. But as usual it seemed like I was the only one who felt it. I send you letters every 2 days. But you only reply once a week. Time passed and the next day, Emma was found and immediately sent to the saint for treatment. Touching her stomach she prayed for her and activated divine magic, saying, Emmanuel.
This is the greeting of the Holy Nation.
Emma's friends also prayed for her. And the saints said that they found her at the entrance to the forest. According to the scouts, it was most likely the work of a monster. Monsters do not often appear in this area, so she must have let her guard down. But by drinking a potion that made it appear that she had died after receiving a wound, she saved her life. MC ran up to her excitedly and asked her to use her divine power, but she said that this force is not omnipotent. If they gave them something valuable as a relationship, they could perform a miracle. But Jan exclaimed in response that she should understand that the herbalist's daughter did not have such riches. She said that relationships were not related to monetary value. Rather, the difficulty of obtaining the thing was important. It was unfortunate, but they should prepare for the worst. Emma's father would be coming soon. It would be difficult to explain something like this to him, and if they wished to entrust this task to them, it would be better for them to leave right now. But MC refused and said that he would stay. He was the last person to see her, and so he should tell him everything. Perhaps this was their last meeting. Noticing how he was clenching his fist, the saint told him not to blame himself. No one was to blame for what had happened. She touched her shoulder with 2 fingers and prayed for him, wishing that peace of mind would return to him. After they were alone, Leto cursed loudly and slammed his fist on the wall, exclaiming, "Why did a monster appear at the entrance to the forest? If it weren't for that, she would have run away." Looking at his friend, Jan felt uneasy, and then a piercing scream from Emma's father was heard. He walked past them with tears in his eyes and screamed in grief, but MC stopped him and asked, "He is Emma's father, right?" The man immediately realized that he knew his daughter, and begged him to help them. Let him at least let him see his daughter's face, but Jan couldn't do anything about it. For the purpose of hygiene, they didn't even let them see her. And there was nothing they could do. If they had strong support, if they had money to offer, then maybe they could do something. But they are simple rural nobles. The only thing they could do was tell him that the priests are doing their best to cure her. The man fell to his knees in frustration, and the boys followed him and began to calm him down. MC showed him the potion, and said that Emma had given it to him yesterday. It was a new potion that she was proud to have developed. He must keep his daughter's achievements to himself. The man looked at it with tears in his eyes. He refused to accept it and told Jan to use it, then grabbed him by the shoulders and asked him in return to never forget his daughter. MC frowned and wondered if there was really nothing he could have done. But he definitely could have prevented all of this. If only he had taken the letter more seriously. If only he had given her a more specific warning before he left. But he doesn't know if this letter is really from the future, and he's not sure if it's true. But he definitely had a feeling that made him not completely ignore the contents of the letter. When he got back to his room, he took the part of the letter from the trash bin and looked at it, thinking that in that case, he should find Sophia, the author of that letter, and make sure that the events described in it would never happen. The next morning he told Leto about it. And when he heard a woman's name, he exclaimed in surprise, did he finally have a girlfriend? He never thought that such a day would come. To think that someone like him would actually be interested in a woman. John pushed him away and asked him what kind of nonsense he was talking about. He told him that he needed to find the author of that letter. Leto asked if he had checked the student register yet. He confirmed it, there was no one with that name. Then his friend assumed that it was a fictitious name. He wondered what kind of woman was making him so nervous. Memzi exclaimed in confusion. He already said nothing like that. Why would he be nervous? He exclaimed irritably that he just wanted to ask her something. And Lida looked away playfully, asking if he wanted to ask her to be his girlfriend. He paid for the same words. Immediately Jan hit him with all his strength, and he promised that he would not bully him anymore. He sighed, becoming serious, and asked if Sophia was the name of a flower. MC agreed with him, and added that that was why he was not sure if it was a real name, or a made-up one. His friend suggested that the nickname might have something to do with the flower. He heard it was quite common in the north. So maybe she was from there. This made MC wonder if this was Yordina's territory. Leto promised to ask him about it. But if they were talking about someone from the north, then there was only one person that came to mind. He looked away and said with a smile that his crazy fan was over there right now. He followed his gaze and saw Seria watching him from behind a tree, with an embarrassed expression, and said that was what he had thought of her at first too. Leto said that the only family he knew of, living in the snow-covered north, was the Yordina, but he didn't understand why she would send a love letter, using a false name instead of just talking to him directly. John irritably sent him on his way and then decided to talk to Seria. She immediately handed him a bag of something shiny, as compensation for his advice, which made him nervous. The bag contained a ridiculous amount of gold. Definitely more than 200 coins. She waved her gift away and asked what compensation. She looked away embarrassedly, and said that when she had asked him for advice earlier, she realized that it had been rude of her not to offer him anything. In return he told her that it wasn't rude at all, and there was no way he could accept such a large amount of gold. But why was she so desperate for his advice? She said that it was because she didn't think anyone else was capable of teaching her anything. There was a lot to learn from people you couldn't beat. Her words made him think that at first he thought she had gotten a little better, But it seemed like that was just in front of him. Nervously pointed out that, like he said before, he had no idea how to teach someone like her. Besides, isn't she doing just fine on her own, even if she didn't have him as her teacher? He was sure that she would achieve higher results on her own one day. She said that if she missed the hunting festival this year, she wouldn't have the chance again. And the mention of that event made MC think again. The letter said that Sophia was also participating in the hunting festival this year. She continued to convince him, already thinking that he would refuse her again. This time he decided to act differently. Precisely because of this letter, he put his hand on her shoulder and offered to train with her. So he wanted to find out if Seria was really Sophia. So several days passed since he started training with her. Although he was unable to figure out whether she was Sophia or not, he learned many other things during his training with her. Firstly, her social skills are zero. She has a nickname, the Rude Yadina. But she did not get it because of evil intentions, is simply terrible at interacting with others. Secondly, she does not know the meaning of the word rest. He heard that high-ranking nobles train without rest, drinking healing potions, and Seria is one of such people. When she got injured during training, he asked if she was okay, and she of course said yes. She wanted to cure it all with a potion. And he grabbed her injured leg and asked, "She knows that potions aren't a cure. All right, they don't relieve the tension and fatigue in her joints. That's why they pace themselves during training." The other day she said that this year was her last chance, right? What exactly did she mean by that? Why was she so worried about that? She looked down and told him sadly that there was someone in the 4th year that she wanted to beat. Jan said that just because a person graduates from the academy doesn't mean it's over. He started bandaging her leg and continued. She could meet that person and ask for a sparring match, if she really cared that much. But she refused because the more time passes, the less chance she has to go up against that person. He didn't get what she meant. And she said that if she went against the head of the family, she would be exiled immediately. He was very surprised by her words and began to guess everything. It turns out that she wanted to go up against Delphine Yadina, the best 4th-year student in the fencing department. She is her half-sister, who will become the head of the family after graduation. Seria asked. He just said that she will still have a chance, even after she graduates from the academy, right? But that is not true at all. The only place where the direct and secondary lines can be valued equally is the academy. Under her confident gaze you can open 1/5 of the letter. Of course I know that working in the imperial capital can be difficult. I am not such a heartless woman that I do not understand how heavy the burden you bear must be, because I have watched you up close. I have seen your pain, sorrow and suffering as your fiancé. I find it reprehensible to fail to support your lover in such difficult and harsh times. And I am still deeply puzzled by the thought of it. In the past Seria was defeated by her half-sister, but she changed the rules of the fight to 1-on-1, and that was unfair. Delphine laughed at her and praised her for fighting with her, even if she failed to find allies. But let her remember that gathering people and using them is part of the skill. Seria gritted her teeth in frustration and thought that everyone, like Yadina, was on her sister's side. So she had no chance of finding allies in the family. If only she had allies of her own. While she was thinking about this, MC had just finished bandaging her and said with a smile that she should be able to move now. She remained silent and glanced at him thinking, what if this man became one of her allies? Maybe she should ask him to support her.
더 엠퍼러즈 페이브리트 페스터벨 아이달럴러스.
The hunting festival was about to take place. It was one of the main events held at the academy, which was a competition to see who could hunt the strongest.
매지켈 비스츠.
The magical beasts in the southern forest where the festival was held were left untouched for this very purpose. Seria, who was supposed to participate in the hunting festival, and Sophia, who was supposed to get closer to Jan during the hunting festival. He didn't know what this had to do with him, but it was all bothering him. As he was thinking about this, Celine ran up to him and waved at him. Asking him to come along, she stopped and started breathing heavily, and MC asked who she was running away from. Like that she pointed at him and called him a dumbass. which made him angry. And she said that a normal person wouldn't want to train with a kid. They just beat up. He told her that it was just a sparring match, and after that they made up.
Because of this.
The girl got indignant and asked if she hadn't been stalking him. He sighed and explained everything to her. She just wanted to ask him for something, and she didn't follow him around anymore. But Celine was still very indignant. She blocked his way and exclaimed why he was so insistent on taking her side. Unexpectedly for her, he grabbed her face tap. Her anger immediately evaporated and was replaced by embarrassment. She asked what he was doing, but he remained silent and approached her. He froze for a few seconds and asked if she had changed her perfume. She told him that it wasn't perfume at all, after which she embarrassedly lowered her eyes and said with a smile that it might be the smell of her new face wash. In this way Jan very successfully changed the subject, and she didn't mention Syria anymore. She remembered something, and asked if he knew what practical exercises they were going to do. Today it was her first time. He told her that it would probably be something like exploring the forest and getting to know the environment, after which the girl sighed thoughtfully, and hoped that they wouldn't encounter any magical beasts. He supposed that normally there wouldn't be a chance, but the letter said that there would be an attack by magical beasts. If he responded correctly, large casualties could be avoided. But it also meant that there was a high chance that many people would die, and so he had to prevent it at all costs. He was the only one who knew about the warnings in the letter. It was time for today's lesson. Professor Derek gathered the students at the entrance to the forest, and decided to tell them a few important points before they began. Surely they all knew about the student who had recently been attacked by a magical beast at the entrance to the forest. The fact that the beasts had come so close to the entrance, when they usually wouldn't go anywhere near it, meant that they might encounter them too. So they should be careful. Meanwhile MC looked around. He met the gaze of Syria, who had been watching him all this time again. And then she suddenly turned away and looked down in embarrassment. Professor Derek swung his sword and said that in addition, since there are many trees in this forest, it might be difficult for them to swing the sword freely. He demonstrated this with his own example, and advised them to be mindful of the surroundings when they move or attack. MC looked closely at his sword and thought, the magical beasts in this forest are completely accustomed to the terrain. If they encounter them, they will be at a disadvantage. After that the professor's sword began to glow and he swung it, saying that if they were sword experts who could materialize their aura, everything would be different. Even if the sword's trajectory is blocked with each swing, everything in its path will be cut down. He demonstrated this by swinging his sword several times, and cutting down the trees around him, and said that however, no matter how good of a sword expert they were, they couldn't completely ignore the surroundings. He pointed to a tree next to him, and said that situations like this could determine whether they would win or lose. For swordsmen, maintaining distance was crucial. That's why today they would be doing practical exercises using the forest environment. Have them split into pairs so they could move around freely. During training, however, due to the recent incident, have them not go close to the middle of the forest, and if they sensed any danger, have them get out of there first and report the situation. While everyone was pairing up, Jan thought that if a group of magical beasts appeared, like the letter said, staying together would help concentrate their forces, and make it easier to fight them. But even if he asked to gather everyone together, he would just be considered crazy. In the end, all he can do is quickly inform the professor about the appearance of a group of magical beasts. Since a battle might break out while he's thinking, he'll obviously team up with her. Celine had already run up to him, thinking that they would be in the same group, but he chose Saria instead. When he grabbed her shoulders and offered to team up with her, with a smile his friends seemed to turn to ice in shock. After that they went into the forest. We're still within the area where the professor said it was safe for students, and so far no magical beasts had appeared. He looked at his partner and asked if that wasn't strange. She agreed with him, and added that she couldn't sense the presence of magical beasts.
They decided to move on, and MC thought that it was impossible for someone as skilled in detecting magical beasts as she was not to notice them. He suggested that they take a break, but asked her to remain vigilant even now, and she agreed with him, adding that it was no problem. It was evening and they were still resting, and spending so much time with him made the girl nervous. She asked him why he wanted to team up with her, and he hesitantly told her that it was because they were friends. Let her just not tell him that he was the only one who considered them friends. She got nervous and said that in exchange for him becoming her friend, should she offer him something in return? When they got back to the dorm, she could get him gold or something else. He smiled nervously and told her that it wouldn't be friendship if everything was based on a transactional relationship. Friends talk to each other, go for walks together and so on. They also talk about things that they can't share with outsiders, and just spend time together. That's enough since. The girl asked him for permission to ask him a slightly rude question, and when he agreed she asked if he was doing this for his friend. His face immediately changed in expression, and she asked if they went this deep into the forest because his friend was attacked here. Is he here to take revenge on the magical beasts? He told her that he didn't know that. And she asked then why is he doing this? He clenched his fist in anger and remembered Emma. In the end he couldn't take it anymore, and shouted loudly that he said he didn't know, but it wasn't for revenge. He went this far to find the magical beasts. Syria looked at him with confusion and asked, "What is friendship? Is it about having a duty to do things for each other?" He told her that he didn't know. Isn't that something that happens naturally? If she were in his place, what would she do if he was attacked by a magical beast? She confidently stated that she would definitely want to destroy him, and he said that was exactly how he felt right now, because she was his friend. She looked down and asked confusedly, "So that was the point of friendship?" He looked around and said that he was not an idiot. He was not going to blindly rush at the magical beasts. He had to make sure that he didn't lead them into a trap. Suddenly he felt something and called out to Syria excitedly, asking if she felt it, but judging from her reaction, she didn't feel anything. He asked her to be quiet and concentrate. She said in a confused voice that she didn't feel anything special, but then her gaze changed. She sensed the presence of 3 or more magical beasts at once, and said excitedly that if there were that many, the students in the forest were in danger. On this note, the contents of the 6th part of the letter can be revealed. However, protecting Erin Court, one of the 3 main trading ports of the empire, and a strategic point for defending the western coast of the continent, is also one of the duties of the nobility of the empire.
John, you must understand
that the echoes of the last war have not yet died down. However, the reason I always take the time to write to you is because I want you to at least briefly notice my deep feelings for you. The next moment Syria reached for her weapon and asked, "Are they going to attack?" The protagonist replied in the negative. It would be better to run away. There was no need to defeat them. The safest option for them was to report everything to the professor. He then asked, "Is she ready?" Looking at her expression, he added, "That's good." They should run. She agreed with him and ran forward at a rapid pace. After a while, the protagonist turned around and thought he was chasing them, but with such a gap they had a chance to escape. If only they could keep their distance and report to the professor. The next second his eyes widened in horror. He saw Syria fall to the ground, gritting her teeth in pain. He shouted, "How is she?" She put her hand on her ankle and said, it looked like she had sprained her ankle, which she had injured during training. She would be fine, she just needed a bandage. She looked at the protagonist and said that it was her fault. We should leave her here, otherwise they would get him too mentor. The protagonist thought nervously. He hadn't expected that. They were closing the distance between them very quickly at this rate. He then said Syria. For her to move forward, she shouted indignantly. What was he even talking about? This is all because of her. He replied that she should never say such a thing to her friends. He ran in the opposite direction and she shouted unevenly. Mentor MC, continuing to run forward, thought the forest is silent. The animal must have instinctively sensed the approach of predators,
and immediately hid there was no need for a head-on collision, and he would ambush them here. He then opened the test tube, and thought that it was time to use potion that Emma gave him. With these thoughts he drank the contents, then threw the test tube on the ground. He said it still tastes disgusting. He then looked at his clenched fist and thought, but as long as he had this, he could reach them before the beasts noticed him. But since the potion does not hide his smell, he will carefully disguise it with dirt and grass. With these thoughts he began to smear himself with dirt. He then thrust his sword into the bark of a tree and thought finally,
if he hid somewhere out of sight.
He climbed up a tree branch and thought, these beasts would not be able to find him. And now beasts they must all be coming for him. After a while a wolf-like creature appeared next to him, and the protagonist thought it showed itself. Ash fur, black eyes and huge fangs emitting magical energy, a body larger than that of a grown man. It was definitely a demonic beast. It seemed confused because the scent he was following suddenly ended. The next second MC abruptly jumped off the branch. He thrust his sword forward and tried to hit the creature's head, thinking that his aura wasn't thick enough to pierce it, but if he pressed down with all his weight, then gritting his teeth in tension, he shouted he must die. After that he finally stabbed the weapon into the monster's head. Looking at the creature's body, he said, even one of them is so hard to kill. How much longer can it last? He then thought this is not the time to despair. Syria's life will be in danger if he lets even one of them follow her. He will definitely leave them here. He will kill every last one of them. He then looked into the distance and thought, it's here it seems that since they are wolf-like demonic beasts, it is natural that they move in packs. Although he can only see one, he can sense the presence of many others around him. They are currently scattered in search of prey. There are definitely at least 5 of them prowling around him. In that case he must kill one before he calls the pack. The next second he jumped out of the bushes, attacking the demonic beast in front of him. He swung his weapon and in response, the creature bit his hand. The protagonist thought that he should endure it. If he raised his voice others were surrounding him. Then he swung his weapon again and used his axe to attack the monster. Looking at his axe he said that this axe was certainly useful. He thought that his senses had become much sharper after being possessed by the evil spirit, and his reaction speed had definitely improved, just like when he fought Syria. Whatever the reason, the evil spirit served him well. It seems that, in this state, he can endure any number of them. After a while another creature approached the bodies of its kin. MC, taking advantage of the moment, plunged his sword into the monster's throat and then with a heavy sigh, said, damn them. There were more monsters approaching him. The protagonist, holding his axe in front of him, said, well, they should attack those damn wolves. As he walked forward, he thought magical beasts were far faster than normal wolves, but they were still just beasts after all. Their movements were simple. He thought it would be hard to deal with several at once, but if that was all they could do, he could handle it the next second. He attacked 2 of the creatures at once and turned around and said, well, they should have come out of their holes. He would be enough for them all. After a while he stood surrounded by bodies. He thought he had taken care of all the magical beasts, but he sensed another one. Seeing the glowing eyes in front, he thought, what's wrong with him? He's not getting any closer. Did he set a trap expecting him to fall into it? Leaning against a tree, the protagonist said, pretty smart for a beast, but then he has no reason to fight. Then he thought, wait. That smell. He gritted his teeth and said, 노예요 시트. He thought he will never be able to forget this smell. It smells like an alchemy classroom. No, just like the potion from Emma's workshop. The hand holding the sword began to tremble. He gritted his teeth and looked at the huge monster and said, it was him, it was the one who attacked Emma. The next second, the creature opened its mouth and MC thought, he is sure of it. This piece of cloth from Emma's cape. Then he pointed his sword at the creature and said, hey, he will die right here and now. The next second, the wolf-like creature dropped a piece of the cape onto his sword. The protagonist thought, this idiot. The creature began to walk around him and he thought, it feels like it is laughing because it is confident in its victory. It looks like it wants to rip him apart.
Just like it ripped those beasts apart.
But he will not let it get what it wants. It is not like the other beasts that immediately pounced on him. It must be a supreme magical beast. It could die if it slipped. He needed to test it first. With that he ran forward and swung his weapon.
Ending up behind the monster.
But the next second, he flew to the side and skidded to a stop on the ground. Turning around he thought, damn. It's too fast. He saw it coming. But he still couldn't react in time. Then the monster approached him. Opening its mouth and revealing sharp fangs, protagonist threw his weapon forward.
Hitting the monster's mouth.
Then he pushed off the ground and swung his axe, attacking the creature. He thought, come on, why is it so heavy? After that he attacked again. The creature spun in the air a few times, then landed on the ground. MC thought, this idiot. He did a somersault. Then he said, he should sell it to the circus. Oh well. He'll just beat it half to death and then hand it over to them. He thought that he had broken a few teeth when he grabbed his sword, so he probably didn't have to worry about the bites. But he still had to worry about all his other moves, not to mention that he was in worse shape, because he had missed his first attack. He wouldn't be able to dodge if he charged again, with the same insane speed as before. The next second the monster's paw was heading straight for him. The protagonist managed to turn back. And then the creature swung its paw again. The protagonist, bending from the blow, thought that he was superior to it in both endurance and speed. Then he swung his weapon again, and thought it would be bad for him if this fight dragged on. He should finish this while he was still just playing with it. Well, it couldn't be helped. He didn't want to fight like this because of the risk. But the next second, the monster released a stream of powerful energy from its mouth, which threw the protagonist into a nearby tree. The protagonist sank to the ground, as the wolf-like creature brought its claw to his chest. First letter part 8. Just like that time, when a group of magical beasts attacked her during the night. Division's practical training. What would have happened if we hadn't reacted quickly? But no one cared at the time. We thought that since the forest was the stage for a hunting festival, they were deliberately turning a blind eye to the beast's reproduction. It was a very naive and simplistic assumption, as expected from the students I heard. The administration was in complete chaos, no matter how I look at the whole situation. I think it was Dean Delmore's mistake to insist on holding a hunting festival that year. The next second, protagonist frowned as he looked at the monster approaching him. He thought, it's not killing him right away. It was the same with Emma. He reached for his axe and thought he ripped her stomach open, as if he was playing with her. The next second he stood up, stabbing his sword into the monster's body. He thought, this is how he knows that if he pretends to be weak, he'll let his guard down and leave his guts exposed. Then MC smiled and said, he happily walked up to him to rip his stomach open right. He then shouted, not even realizing that he was about to have his own guts ripped out. He stabbed his sword even deeper, then swung it as the creature fell to the ground. He said that he should have learned to kill his prey right away, instead of playing with it like he did with Emma. When he faced someone stronger than him, he stepped on the creature's body, and said that his arrogance was his undoing. Idiot. He shouted that he must remember that and his killer is Emma. With that, he plunged the sword into the creature again with crushing force. He shouted that he should not even dare to forget about it. Meanwhile, Professor Derek ran forward at a rapid pace. He thought, Jan, please. I hope he is alive. Then he stopped breathing heavily and said, that scraping of steel just now, was that Jan? Seeing the bodies of the creatures, he thought that he felt two presences approaching from a short distance. One of them is the beast and the other is probably Jan. At that moment Celine ran up to him and shouted, Professor, where is Jan? He answered that he is not here. She was surprised. Then where is he? He looked ahead and replied that they would find out if they continued on their way. The other students followed behind, and the next second the protagonist, who was sitting, leaning on the monster's body, called out to them. Celine ran to him shouting worriedly. Jan MC, breathing heavily, laughed and said, aren't they guys a little late? Professor Derek, when he woke up, He was in the temple according to the saint. Professor Derek brought him here. When he passed out after killing a magical beast, he looked at his bandaged arm and thought that he would be discharged. For a long time he was lucky that he got off with just that. After all, his Avenida worked and he was able to avenge Emma. Not that it would bring her back from her coma. And then he said, according to the professor, the beast was young for its size. If it was more mature, it wouldn't be messing around with its prey. Right? Leto sat next to him and noticed how serious his monologue was. He was an idiot, the protagonist objected. He was a patient, okay? If he came to fight, then he should go back. Leto pointed his finger at his head and said, a patient who had gone crazy. Do you even know why did he even get involved in this? Just to show off in front of a girl. The protagonist clenched his fist and was indignant. What was he talking about? Leto asked. He has a potion from Emma. Doesn't he? He confirmed it. It was thanks to this that he was able to kill that creature. Leto asked why he didn't just give it to Syria. He would have done the same and hidden her higher up in the tree. He could have easily brought the professor. Or does he not understand something? There was no need to risk his life, idiot. The protagonist punched his hand and noticed in surprise. And he was right, his comrade said that he really was hopeless, idiot. From now on, if he was going to do something, he better ask him first. He raised his index finger and added, with all that he had to give him credit. That rude girl Syria is. It's crazy about him now. Does he know about it? He saw her hanging around in front of the temple. MC thought seriously. Why not just go in like a normal person? She must feel guilty the next second. The door to the room opened and Celine called out to the protagonist, then threw herself into his arms and joyfully shouted, with tears in her eyes, wake up. Leto said, and he was nothing to her. Celine screamed. She was so happy that he was okay. She bit his fingers and asked, so what are you talking about? Leto said that he would buy him a drink. With the reward for defeating the magical beast. Celine was surprised. Reward? Leto confirmed there was a rumor that they were offering 70 gold for this whole thing. Protagonist grabbed his hand and said that he heard it for the first time. Then Leto said that he was going to the bathroom, and that they needed to decide what they wanted to eat. Celine took the protagonist's hand in hers and asked, well, where should they go? He wanted to eat monster meat. With that she squeezed his hand and he screamed, hey, that hurt. She then raised her index finger and suggested that they go to a restaurant that specializes in magical beasts in the city's dining district. She heard that they serve the best dragon meat there. He was indignant. Is that really something to talk about with someone in pain? She then looked away guiltily. And he apologized and said that he wasn't angry. The next second she pressed her forehead to his chest and said that she was really worried. She really thought he was dead. The protagonist put his hand on her head and asked, she really thought he would die that easily. He thought that Celine certainly smelled good. Celine screamed, why does he always put himself in danger? She doesn't care what happens to this girl. All she cares about is his safety. He replied that he can't just leave someone he knows in danger. She screamed, that's not it. He's the most important person in the world to her. Nothing else matters. It's been that way since she was little. He wondered what was she doing. All of a sudden he meant really he. Her childhood friend almost died. But then she crawled a little closer and said, that's why she wants him to take care of himself. He wondered if the shock was too much. Her face turned red with embarrassment as she took his hand. His face was covered in sweat. She moved closer to his face and told him not to move. At that moment Leto came out. Celine jumped back in fear. And he said that he felt bad interrupting this moment between his friend and the little girl, who was like a sister to him. But he figured he should let them know that he was there too. MC put his hand to his face and frowned, thinking that was close. What did he almost do to the one he treats like a little sister? Then Celine shouted at him to forget it. The door abruptly closed behind her. After that Leto pointed his finger at the protagonist and shouted, if he plans to continue to communicate with Syria, he better watch out for Celine. The world of women is much more complicated than he can imagine. The The protagonist smiled awkwardly. Looking back, he now realizes he shouldn't have ignored Lito's words. After all, their relationship deteriorated because of him. After a while, Syria was walking down the street. Students were looking at her and talking. They should see that rude Syria. One of the students laughed and said that he heard that she ran from magical beasts, that her heels were sparkling. Such as the best second-year student of the fencing department. They say that the senior she was paired with is a real talent, while she is just a show-off. Syria thought that they were wrong. As she walked forward, yes, she ran away, and yes, Master Jan was the one who defeated the magical beasts. He wasn't even supposed to fight. It was her mistake, her responsibility. But he fought in her place, telling her not to say such things to her friends earlier. The professor walked forward and shouted, "Emergency! Get the temple ready for surgery immediately." Because of this, Master Jan almost died. Why did he risk his life for her? In the past, she probably wouldn't have been able to answer this question, but she thinks she understands a little now. She remembered when MC came up to her and asked with a smile, "Syria, is she meditating again?" He suggested going out and doing something more interesting. He was the first person she felt comfortable around. Even when she spoke harshly and complained, he didn't say anything in response. As if even doing nothing was enough. As if she could just be herself at school. Soon after, she began to feel like she didn't want to lose him, so now she thinks she can understand, even if only a little, what he must have felt when he went against the beasts. Just as she doesn't want to lose Mentor Jan. He doesn't want to lose her because friends won't let each other die. After a while, she walked up to the hospital room and thought, "That's it, Mentor Jan. Her first friend in her life." Protagonist waved at her when he saw her embarrassed. She walked up to him and bowed, asking if he was feeling okay. He confirmed that he was. It almost didn't hurt anymore. She said she was glad to hear that. He said he was glad she came. His head was splitting. Because of the book Lito gave him to study for his exams. He saw that she hadn't changed either. She looked down, holding a bag of coins in her hands, and asked. He wasn't angry, was he? He wondered if she was worried about what had happened. Then he asked why he should be angry if he had no reason to be. She asked, "Really not?" He thought she had lost control of her emotions, and then he folded his arms across his chest and smiled and said, "Anyway, you shouldn't worry too much. It's natural for friends to help each other. Isn't that right?" She looked down sheepishly and said, "Friends." He added, "By the way." What she was holding in her hands was that compensation again. She replied that it wasn't. It was the reward Professor Derek had given her. She held out the bag and added, "For defeating the magical beasts." He told her to give it to him as soon as possible. Protagonist, looking at all the contents of the bag, asked, had he gone too far? Had she accidentally thrown too much in there? She turned around with an awkward smile. And then he reached out to her and said that she didn't even try to give it to him, saying that it was his reward for saving her life. She should just take the extra amount back. Her life is not something that can be bought with gold. Syria, blushing with embarrassment, thought their hands. He held her hand and she said, "Mentor." The next second, Celine looked into the room and shouted, "Jan." She wished him a good morning, and then her face distorted with anger. She walked forward, bumping into Syria, who was trying to thank the protagonist. Celine, walking forward, asked Jan, "How is he feeling?" MC, looking at her indignantly, asked, "What is she doing at this moment?" Syria, getting to her feet, held her bruised elbow with her hand and smiling awkwardly, said that she guessed she would take her leave. She had not finished her morning workout yet. Celine said, "What a rude, impudent fool. Whose fault does she think it is that he ended up here at all?" The protagonist was indignant. Why was she behaving like this? She replied, "Okay, he should just forget about her." She suggested that they should think about what they would have for a snack when he was discharged. The antagonist remembered Lito's words about the world of women being much more complicated than he could imagine, and thought, is that what he meant? He said, "Anyway, that's not the point." She, just before he could finish speaking, Celine interrupted him, "Okay, then it's decided they would go as soon as he was discharged." At that moment Syria, desperate, was walking down the street. Lupin, noticing her, said she was an even bigger eyesore than before. She needed to be moved out of the way. He squeezed the paper in his hands and said that he couldn't stand it anymore. When the professor spoiled her for being the best student, but now she abandoned her friend and ran away alone. She was a disgrace to the entire nobility. Did she have any weaknesses? They needed to crush her completely. He thought so too, didn't he? Team in response. He looked at him with his legs crossed and asked. He knew not to mess with Yadina, right? One wrong move and they would take revenge. He should behave decently. At that moment an upperclassman approached them, and noticed how interesting their conversations were. She wanted to tell them something about Syria if they had time. Of course Lupin asked who the hell was she. They didn't ask her. Dean stopped him with his hand in front of him and told him to wait. Turning to the upperclassman, he asked what she wanted to tell them. He offered to listen. The student came closer and took off her hood with a smile. She said that it was about her birth. They don't have to worry about Eurydia's retaliation. She can guarantee it. Meanwhile, MC came to Emma. He stood next to her bed and thought, if only he believed the contents of the letter, then this could have been prevented. Two things written in the letter had already come true: the attack on Emma and the appearance of magical beasts in the forest. This means that there is a high probability of magical beasts appearing at the hunting festival as well, since it says monster. This time it must be stronger than the previous ones. If so, he won't be able to stop it alone. He has no choice but to ask Professor Derek to help him defeat it. At that moment, the saint came to him and said that she thought he was discharged. Did he come to visit someone? He replied that he just decided to stop by for a while. Before leaving he asked how Emma is. She replied, as long as they continue the treatment, you can keep her alive. But that doesn't mean she'll recover. He said he understood about that. The saint extended her hands towards the victim and began the treatment. The protagonist noticed that. She said that if they made a valuable offering, she could be cured. What did she mean by offering? She replied, an item with high divine power or strong magical energy. Usually the remains of valuable magical beasts are used. However, not only are they not always easily available, but it would be difficult for her father to obtain such an item. The MC clenched his fist and asked, would an offering of a high-ranking magical beast be enough? He heard that it costs around 70 gold. The saint replied, unfortunately, that wouldn't be enough, although if we were to guess, an adult of that kind of magical beast might do. The protagonist said he understood, and then smiled and thanked her for explaining. Now if she'll excuse him. She said of course. She is sure that Emma will visit a miracle soon, so they need to look after her together. The protagonist headed for the exit and thought, could the monster mentioned in the letter be strong enough to be used as an offering? But he can't handle something stronger than that beast alone. You should meet the professor. Now after a while, he resolutely opened the doors and apologized to the professor for intruding. Derek, noticing him, said that he seemed to be feeling better. What's the matter? He replied. If magical beasts stronger than those wolves appeared, he would be able to deal with them. Professor Derek noticed he had some difficult questions, but there's nothing to worry about.
노 스트롱거 매지켈 비스츠 윌컴.
MC was surprised. But didn't the magical beasts appear out of nowhere last time too? So there's no guarantee that something stronger won't come again, right? The professor folded his arms and said, the chances of that happening in the southern forest are extremely small. Beasts can appear anywhere with a high concentration of unrefined magical energy. That's why the Empire controls the areas around where people live, to prevent them from attacking. But they left the southern forest alone. Did he know why? The protagonist guessed because of the hunting festival. He replied, exactly, they maintain their population at a certain level and prevent strong ones from appearing. Protagonist shouted, but what if a strong beast still survived? He replied, strong beasts love to fight and have a powerful presence. They can't exist unnoticed. If one does manage to survive, they must have a special ability. MC clenched his fist and thought, damn. He's worried exactly because such a strong monster might appear. The professor added besides. The hunting festival is a competition. To see who can hunt the most fearsome beasts, so is it scary if one strong opponent appears. The protagonist lowered his gaze and asked, so he was saying that he didn't care if his students got hurt or died. He replied that he didn't say that. Since the purpose of this tournament is to improve the students' abilities, they cannot interfere so easily. Moreover, overcoming crises was also one of the goals. The MC said that he understood. He thought so. He wouldn't take any action unless something happened. It seemed like he had no choice but to handle it himself in the end. After a while in the cafeteria, Syria picked up a plate of food. One of the students chuckled and told them to look. She was a rude girl. Syria ignored them and walked forward, and thought that they had been quiet for a while. But now they were back to their old ways. Teen, addressing his comrade, told him to listen. Wasn't she the one who grew up without a mother? The next second Syria stopped and looked at them seriously. Teen chuckled and asked what's wrong. She wanted to tell him something. She seemed to be trying to incinerate him with her gaze, and then turning around she thought that she should ignore them. She had no idea where they heard that. But she shouldn't waste her energy on them. Teen, still grinning, told her to continue ignoring him. Coming closer he added, as she always did, their genius little Yadina. With that he pushed her forward, causing the plate of food to fly out of her hands, and smash on the ground. The people present began to laugh at this situation. Syria blushed in embarrassment and clenched her teeth in irritation. Meanwhile the protagonist walked down the street and, smiling, thought that it had been so long since he'd eaten anything other than hospital food. Turning the corner, he heard some students talking. One of them asked did they just see that she, on the other hand, was shaking with anger as she left the cafeteria. The student asked, but is it okay to just turn a blind eye to this? This is about Yadina, he asked. So what he heard? That she is considered a disgrace to her family, because her mother is from a lower class. The student asked if her family interferes, won't it affect the entire empire? He replied if anyone will protect her, it will be that upperclassman. What's his name? The MC came up to them and said, Jan Parkus, right? He replied, yeah. That idiot. He turned to the protagonist and then his eyes widened in horror. Protagonist asked, so what just happened? He replied, nothing.
today.
Right guys, he looked at the running students and shouted, they are traitors. The protagonist grabbed his shoulder and asked, can you steal him for a second? He has a few questions for him. After a while, the protagonist asked should the fencing department study typology, all this nonsense about areas or lines. Leto then showed him a sheet and told him to take a look. He asked what was on it, and then he clutched it in his hands and shouted in surprise, what kind of article was this? It said, the incident of repelling the magical beasts in the southern forest. A third-year student, Jan Parkus, 23, came the talk of the academy. After defeating several magical beasts in the southern forest, Lord Parkus defeated as many as 10 monsters, including one high-ranking one. This achievement cannot be considered anything but remarkable, even considering the fact that he is a senior. Meanwhile, second-year Syria Yadina, 22, despite her outstanding academic performance as the top student in the fencing department, was criticized for abandoning her friend and running away, leaving him in danger. MC grabbed his head and shouted, Syria ran away and left her friend in danger. She just went after the professor. And why is he so praised? Leto laughed and said,
it sells better.
The arrogant Yadina runs away, while a minor noble manages to defeat a high-ranking magical beast. Is there a more interesting rumor to come up with? The protagonist asked if he knew who wrote this. If he didn't say anything about it, he told him to just forget about it. Does he really think the princess of the ball will listen to him? The protagonist was surprised. That girl who doesn't even bother to talk to the poor. Then he thinks that nothing can be changed. Leto, putting his hands in his pockets, asked, but why would he go that far? He should just take it as a funny story. He replied that he just thought it wouldn't be good for Syria. It seems like there have been some bad rumors spreading about her lately. After a while, They sat down on a bench in the courtyard. And the MC crossed his legs and said, "That teen had originally insulted Syria, and now others were spreading similar rumors. Well, he scolded those guys well. So they probably won't say it openly anymore." Leto asked what year they were in. He answered probably second years. Judging by the brown coats and everything. He closed his eyes and said, "Teens group of third years and now the second years. He has a bad feeling about this." The protagonist asked about what. He answered, when there is so much bullying going on about one person, there is probably a mastermind coordinating it all. Someone who inflames public opinion and directs the bullying from the shadows. The protagonist asked, "Is that teen a bully from a cruel kingdom in the south? He never had a high opinion of Syria." Leto asked, he really think that a noble from overseas would have such an influence. It was more logical to assume that there was
another mastermind behind all of this.
Someone who had a wide enough information network to know about Syria's bloodline. MC clutched the article in his hands and said, one thing was for sure at this point. First they must destroy Teen and his retinue. They definitely know something. After a while, the protagonist walked behind Syria and thought he finally found her. Waving his hand, he happily said, "Syria, is she okay?" He heard there was an unpleasant incident, then his face twisted in horror. When she turned around, and he saw that she had been doused with some kind of liquid, he grabbed her shoulder and shouted her head. What happened not long before? One of the students said. Seems she returned to the cafeteria when it was time for lunch. If he were her, he would be ashamed to show his face here again. His comrade was sitting next to him and told him to stop. She also needs to eat, even if her mother is a commoner. Syria passed by and froze in place upon hearing these words. Lupin, holding a bottle of drink in his hand, asked if he thought she had also cheated on him. He laughed and replied that he had no idea. Maybe she was just picked up on the streets. Syria, angry, thought, where the hell did they hear about her mother? She clenched her fist and thought that she had put up with this before, but this time she just had to say something open, asked where that scary expression was coming from. They were just talking about a low-class girl. But it seemed to be bothering her right. She furrowed her brows and clenched her teeth in anger. She thought that she could no longer forgive this. She resolutely ran forward. Her leg was bound by magic and she thought earth magic. She decided that she was shifting her center of gravity to her other leg. And the next second she started to fall and thought, is that leg too? She fell to the ground. The students looked at her with laughter. Lupin shouted he was grateful she had made them laugh a lot. Then he opened the bottle of drink and poured the contents on her head. He chuckled and said, my bad. It looks like he tripped too. Syria, is she okay? This road is quite dangerous. So you have to be careful. Doesn't she know simple truths? She thought that it was usually impossible to use magic without a spell. They must have prepared everything. Right after leaving the cafeteria this morning, waiting for her to come in the present tense, she said she had already taken the bait. She was left wondering whether to fight them or not, but she held back in the eyes of her family. Her mother did not exist. Fighting for no reason would only create trouble. The protagonist, indignant, clenched his fist and shouted, for no reason, but she has it. Doesn't she? They insulted her. She replied that he apologized and pretended it was an accident. As for insults, he didn't call her by name, so they could easily get out of it. She reached her hands to her face to wipe away the tears that had appeared, and added, while she would have just caused trouble for her family, she feels much better now. She is grateful that he listened to her. He said, but what is happening to her is not normal. She looked at him and said, it's okay because he's on her side. He said it may be okay for her, but not for him. He decisively went the opposite direction, and stated that he completely disagreed with this. After a while he approached the bullies, and Lupin, turning to Teen, said that she couldn't even dodge basic magic and tripped. He asked if he poured juice on her too. He answered of course. He gave her a luxurious shower that she couldn't afford.
Then Teen noticed Jan's presence and was surprised. He asked if there was any business with them. MC, as if blazing with anger,
asked how they guys knew about Syria's personal life.
Lupin, smirking, asked what is she his girlfriend? Why should they tell him this is their main source of information? Right before he could finish speaking, the protagonist's fist flew straight into his face. He fell to the ground and shouted in irritation,
"Are you crazy? He's a damn minor noble. It looks like he wants his entire family to be destroyed."
The protagonist then swung his weapon and added another blow, sending the student flying into the boxes behind him. The next student raised his fist and charged, shouting, "Crazy idiot," and then he was sent flying upwards by the protagonist's powerful attack. There were already 2 students on the ground. The MC chuckled and said that he didn't expect him to give it all at once. That's why he would beat him up as hard as he could and make him apologize. The protagonist looked at the others and thought, since they were all holding swords, he should have taken care of the magic first.
So Teen was the only problem left.
He was the best 3rd year in the fencing department,
so defeating him would be difficult. But now that it came down to it, there was no point in worrying about the details.
He would just deal with the guys in front of him first, and worry about him later. The next second student charged and shouted,
"They have to get him, he's alone."
The protagonist thought there were 3 left. Maybe it was because his skills had improved a long time ago, but he wasn't worried about them at all. He also charged, their weapons crossed. The student clenched his teeth in tension. MC sighed, then swung his sword,
hitting the opponent's head. He thought, 1 more is ready.
2 more the next second. He received a blow to the back. Turning around, he saw 2 students flying straight at him.
They were screaming that he should die.
He put his sword in front of him, blocking their attack. His sword began to shake from the tension of his hand.
He screamed, swung his weapon,
throwing them back, and then swung for a strike and hit one of the students on the head. He then moved to the next guy and, swinging his weapon again, attacked him as well after that.
He said now only he was left.
Teen, a tree. He reached for the weapon on his back and asked how the hell his skills improved so much. Did he get some kind of miracle potion from Yadina during their morning training? The protagonist said, "Sly idiot.
How did he know that he was training with Syria?
Was he following them?" He suggested that they just agree
that he had been attracting his attention lately.
He held his weapon out in front of him and added,
after all, he had defeated Yadina twice.
The next second he charged, releasing his aura and holding his sword out in front. MC held his weapon out in front, trying to defend himself. Then his opponent swung his sword,
sending him flying backwards. He chuckled and asked, "It's not like he's going to lose here,
is it?" His skills may have improved, but his magic hasn't. The protagonist thought he was right. Even if he was able to read his movements and react to it, as long as he couldn't do anything about his magic sword,
he wouldn't win. He had to find a way to deal with this.
Although his magic power had increased slightly, he was still no match for him in a direct clash. Then their weapons crossed. A powerful burst of energy struck right in front of them.
The protagonist jumped to the side. Teen smiled and said he was pretty cool, but he shouldn't think he could win just by running around. MC, breathing heavily,
held his sword out in front of him and told him to wait, idiot. He would cover his mouth, yet he replied he would like to see him try.
If he could, then he would admit defeat.
Like a man, the men of the fierce Southern Kingdom are willing to bear the consequences of a fair fight, the protagonist thought.
A fair fight, how easy to say for someone who picks on Syria, just because he can't beat her. Then Teen ran to attack, swinging his weapon.
The protagonist thought, from above,
a lightning attack fell on his chest. He fell to the ground and thought,
what kind of speed is that? As he was getting to his feet, his opponent approached and said that he remembered something.
He was curious. During his first fight with her,
he saw him dodge an attack that was unavoidable, as if he bent reality itself.
How did he do that?
The protagonist, holding the hilt of the sword, thought.
Is he talking about the time when he was possessed by an evil spirit? Only a master can use spatial souls. Stop steps legs. Now that he looked closely. The ground here is soft, it is all dug up from the recent battle. This is it his only way to win. And then he swung his sword again. And shouted that he was a little interested in this technique. He is sure that he can dodge his attacks. MC fell to the ground again. Then immediately got up. And again reached for his weapon and thought just a little more. His opponent smirked. What happened? Has he already given up and stopped resisting?
더 프로테거니스트 소트 오케이.
Now all he needs is for him to attack him. Teen shouted that in that case, he will finish him off. He put the weapon in front of him and quickly ran to attack, then struck in front of him. The protagonist dodged to the side. His opponent looked at him in surprise. In the next second the protagonist attacked him. He thought in surprise, did he take it? What a monster in that case. He threw his opponent to the ground and grabbed him by the neck. He was confused, shouting, "What is he doing? He should take his hands off." And then MC grabbed the axe and swung it, telling him to stop mumbling and in general he should shut up. With these words he hit his opponent and thought, "Garbage idiot, how dare he throw mud at someone behind his back. Scum like him should be smashed into a pancake." Then he repeated a few more blows and getting to his feet, sighed with relief. He said, "Finally some peace and quiet." At that moment, Lupin got to his feet and pointing a finger at him shouted, "He is an idiot, how dare he raise a hand to him. He is Lupin, the third son of the Imperial Count Rainella. Now if he kneels down right now." Before he could finish speaking, the protagonist's axe flew right past his face. He dodged in surprise. At which point the protagonist walked forward and said, "It looks like he wants to get smashed into a pancake too, now that he's awake. How about telling him how he got this information about Syria?" He responded in fear that he doesn't know anything. Some green-haired girl told him about it. That's all, he has no idea who she is. MC asked, "Green-haired?" He responded that he only heard about Syria's mother from her. That's all he knows, he swears that's all. And then the protagonist walked forward and said, well, he guesses that's all he can expect from them. In any case they should remember there won't be a second time. With that he put his hand on the student's shoulder. He thought that now Syria should be okay for a while. If they try to do something nasty behind his back again, they will remember that the psychopath will come for them. However, as for the scum who spread rumors about Syria's past, he swears that he will find and crush them all. After a while Syria came to the training ground. She thought he is not here either. Did something happen to Mentor Jan? Did he go to avenge her yesterday? She started shaking her head from side to side and thought it doesn't matter how angry he was. Because of her. Then she heard they should look. It's an orphan. She turned around and saw two female students laughing at her. One of them asked, why is she looking at her like that? She won't even be able to complain to her mother about her. Syria trembled with anger and thought, these vipers, she should control herself. They are annoying her, but she can't do anything. The female student added, so vicious, right? Her friend said she should look at the ferocity in her eyes. This is all due to lack of proper upbringing. She thinks she got at least half. At that moment Teen appeared behind them and said, that's enough. They were surprised and one of them asked, what about him? He said that he already told them to leave it as is, unless they wanted to end up like him. There were several bandages on his face. A student pointed at him and shouted this. This must be some kind of misunderstanding. They were just discussing an acquaintance. Teen said there is no need to justify themselves since that psycho, Jan Parkas, did this to them, not giving them a chance to unite. He will do this to everyone. All of his henchmen stood with noticeable wounds on their faces. The girls looked at her in fear. Then one of the students, looking at the others, shouted, what are they all watching? This is not a show for them. Teen then said, Syria Yadina. He bowed and added he apologized. He wouldn't bother her anymore. His henchmen did the same. And she replied he could have saved himself the embarrassment if he had done it another time. There was no need to make a big deal out of it. He looked up at her and said,
that there was a reason why he was doing it in such a public place. Leaning closer, he added, if vague rumors were spread, they would be ridiculed so. It was better to leave a clear impression that this crazy guy had defeated them. To be honest, he still didn't like her. She was rude, well. But what was even more annoying was that she was stronger than him, and she had a powerful backing. However, finding allies was also a skill. He placed his hand on her shoulder and told her to be sure to tell Jan what happened today. As she watched the students leave, she thought he was smarter than she thought. Then she saw the female students bowing before her. They said that they were sorry and would not do it again. She looked at them in surprise and thought if she were alone, she would just continue to endure it, with the thought that nothing could be done. But she could not always rely on his help. With these thoughts she clenched her fist and thought that next time, she would definitely handle it herself. After a while the saint folded her arms and was indignant. Mr. Jan, is he enjoying pain? In response he only looked away. She added that more importantly, she heard that yesterday he beat up 8 people. She helped because of his reasons. But if it were not for that, Ranella would have made a big scandal out of it. MC, sitting on the bed, was surprised. Ranella, she confirmed it. The Count was clearly dissatisfied. He thought, after all, this idiot subdued everything. But there is no doubt that he is plotting revenge. What should he do? What if they say that they will put pressure on his family? Then he grabbed his head and the saint said, of course. She explained the situation correctly. When he told her the story, she obviously should have sided with him. After all, heaven protects the righteous. And then there was the favor she owed him from last time. He wondered what was it. She smiled and replied she understood. He doesn't remember, it's not a big deal. So he shouldn't worry about it. Emmanuel, he wondered. Emmanuel, he thought. Damn evil spirit, what the hell happened last week? The saint was a seraphic being. He would never have met outside the academy. Looking at his hands, he thought it couldn't be that simple. What big favor did she owe him that she did this for him? The next second Celine peeked into the room and called him, asking if he really beat up Teen and his minions. Throwing herself into his arms, she asked how his wounds were. He was indignant. Why did she attack him every time they met? She replied seriously, why does he care so much about this stupid fool? He sacrifices himself for her every time. He replied that it was not like that at all. He would do the same for her. Didn't he promise that he would protect her? She smiled sheepishly and said, so he remembered. He smiled and asked, how could he forget that high-ranking nobles had their eye on the mine, on her family's territory? And as part of their plan, they dealt with her uncle. When he saw her, his best friend, crying in the flower garden, he decided that he would definitely protect her. She said his name and then hugged him again. And he, putting his hand on her shoulder, told her not to worry if anything happened to her. He would definitely protect her. She was like a little sister to him. So of course he couldn't just turn a blind eye if something happened. With an indignant face, she looked up at him and wondered, a little sister after that. She stepped on his foot and was indignant. They were having such an intimate moment. Did he really have to say that and ruin everything? He grabbed his foot and wondered what did he do wrong. Again she shouted in irritation at him to forget it. There was no point in trying to explain it to an idiot like him. Then she folded her arms and added, anyway, they would just have to sort out this Yadina problem as soon as possible. Once everything was resolved, Perkis's interest in her should fade. People spreading mean gossip was nothing new, but the situation had changed. Now they were saying nasty things openly and even in front of her. It wasn't just the ones who held a grudge against her and had some real connection to her. Most of them were high-ranking nobles with quite a lot of connections. The protagonist thought Leto said the same thing, then asked if she had any ideas on who could be behind this. She replied, first of all, it couldn't be any of the second years. It was a group that bullied her from time to time. There was no single leader. He said. It seemed like Teen didn't have a mastermind among the third years, either. She said. That left the first years and fourth years.
but they would hardly consider first years right. They hardly had any contact with Yadina, the protagonist said. Then there was a high probability that she was a fourth year. Celine said Lita would come later. So why not ask him to investigate it? He replied that he had many connections. He thought a fourth-year student, who was a high-ranking noble, plus that green-haired source Lupin mentioned, that narrowed down the search quite a bit. Now all that was left was to find the puppeteer. After a while the protagonist walked down the hallway and thought that he never thought that being discharged without anyone to greet him could be so lonely. Then he looked ahead in surprise. Emma's father came closer and bowed, remarking that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. Young Master the MC put his hands in front of him and asked,
"Please don't be so poor."
He asked how she was. The father clasped his hands and replied, "They say she is barely clinging to life. He is such a worthless father. He doesn't know what else he can do." The protagonist asked him not to say that. He is sure that a miracle will happen. Father added that he heard that he killed the magical beast that attacked Emma. He doesn't know how he can repay him for that. With that he took the protagonist's hand, and he replied that it was only because he attacked him. He did nothing to deserve his gratitude. The man then pulled his hand back and apologized, saying that he hadn't thought. MC replied everything is fine. Father said that he just can't help but express his gratitude. Then he turned away. The protagonist, walking further, lowered his gaze and thought that he must save Emma at any cost. After a while he walked forward and thought, Leto really has good connections. He remembered how his friend replied that he could provide it to him, but what would he get in return? He sighed and thought that he was sure that he would find the culprits, even if he just sat back and waited. Then he found Saria training, and thought that he had no doubt that she would come first. Except for this, the atmosphere around her seemed to have changed. Watching her actions, he asked in surprise, how did he even manage to defeat her? She was surprised to see him, then blushed with embarrassment, bowed and exclaimed, "It's not like that. She was really bad without him by her side." Master Jan. She looked away and awkwardly asked, "What about him?" Replied that everything was as usual. By the way, what was she doing just now? She replied that she was practicing a secret family swordsmanship art.
The Golden Lion Sword.
This technique draws multiple blade marks at once. Blur the distinction between real and fake. She can only draw 3 because she is still inexperienced, but an expert can create more than 10 at a time. Protagonist asked if he was even allowed to see such a technique. She replied that it was fine. Even with his skills he would not be able to copy it. She meant that he was already quite strong. He awkwardly scratched the back of his head, and said that she was right. And then she apologized and he said that it was fine. She should forget, he thought. It seems like she has grown in understanding people's feelings. She felt embarrassed for what she said. Then she awkwardly said she heard about what he did yesterday. She's grateful to him for figuring it out. He took her hands and said, "No need to worry about it. They help each other when needed because they are friends. She shouldn't worry so much." She looked at him in surprise and then lowered her gaze and replied, "Maybe she's not that bad. But of course she'll have to solve her problem on her own." He thought in surprise like a bolt from the blue. Then he said of course she can talk to him if anything happens. She looked surprised. Did she just say something? He replied nothing. Will they start training? Then she used the technique again, and he thought her aura was much more stable now. Actually, now that he looked closely, he asked hadn't her aura changed color. She confirmed it had. He said, "This is no small thing." He thought the difference might be small, but it's definitely there. It was a much paler shade of blue before. The color of someone's aura reflects their unconscious. If it changes, it means something inside them has changed. Saria said, but she doesn't feel any internal differences. It's strange, the protagonist asked, if it could be related to the fact that her mother's deeds were made public. She furrowed her brows and replied, although it pained her when people brought up the subject, she didn't think the change in her aura color had anything to do with it. After all, it happened a long time ago. He clarified, a long time ago. She confirmed it when she was 6 years old. Her mother was banished from the Yadina family. She desperately begged not to be separated from her. Her father called the knights and told them to remove that vile woman from here. Right now, in the blink of an eye. They disfigured her mother. But she continued to reach out to her until the very end. Afraid of being banished, she pretended not to see anything. She eventually left, and her older sister, who was standing next to her, told her that if she didn't prove her usefulness, she would suffer the same fate. Since then, she devoted herself to swordsmanship to prove that she was useful. The protagonist asked is that why she wants to defeat her sister, so she can prove that she is strong enough to defeat the next heir of the family. She replied that this is what she had believed for a long time, but now she wants to prove to herself that she is not weak. In any case, she's okay because she has him with her now. Looking at her, he thought he can't just leave her alone now, especially after hearing her story. He said great. In that case, all she has to do is win the hunting festival. She was surprised he thought beating Delphine, the strongest in the academy, one-on-one would be difficult. But since the hunting festival is a team event, he was sure they could do it somehow. Meanwhile, Victoria approached Delphine and said that there were rumors that her sister was going to participate in the hunting festival. She replied well, whatever revealing information about her mother was just her carefree way of greeting her. Looks like she'll have to really crush her now. After a while, MC said that she did well. Syria smiled and remarked that he was a mentor too. He thought that it was about time for him to resume studying the letter. He was so busy with Syria's situation that he forgot about it for a while. He then said all right. He has things to do, so he will. Before he could finish speaking, Syria grabbed his sleeve and said, "Master, does he want to have breakfast with her?" Smiling, he looked at her and said that she was right. He would go right after breakfast. At that moment, Celine came up to them and waving her hand shouted Jan. She means master. Had he finished his morning routine? He was indignant. Who did she call that? Celine came closer and turned her gaze to Seria, who immediately wished her good morning. She asked he was going to go to breakfast, right? She grabbed his hand and suggested that they go together as usual. Just the two of them. She started to pull him in the opposite direction, and he said, since when did the two of them have breakfast together? And then Syria grabbed his sleeve. He thought that they should wait. What was going on here? Celine asked Syria. Does she need something from her Jan? He wondered. This girl eat something bad. Syria told her to let go of his hand. She was indignant. Who did she think she was to stop them? This was their usual day. She was getting too carried away. Just because she had gotten a little closer to Jan, he was only paying attention to her out of pity, for being someone with no friends. The protagonist retorted, hey. He never said something like that. Syria said as she thought. She doesn't seem to have a very nice personality. She's the type to say mean things behind her back, isn't she? She was indignant. Is she trying to make her look like a viper now? Syria asked. Is she wrong when she sees her revealing her ugly inferiority complex like this? Right now she thinks her words are appropriate anyway. She said that the mentor is paying attention to her because he feels sorry for her, right? Moving closer to her ear, she added, then she will remain pitiful so that they can be together forever. Celine pulled MC towards her and yelled she shouldn't cross the line. Syria told her to take out her sword, because she also didn't want to hold back anymore. The protagonist yelled enough of that. They watched him go and he, heading in the opposite direction, said that he wanted them both to leave him alone for a while. After a while he was enjoying his drink. Otto sat across from him and said, and that's why he left them alone. He replied that Seria was starting to get angry, and Celine was saying weird things. So it was starting to piss him off. His friend took a sip of his drink and said, God, what an enviable situation. When two beautiful girls are fighting over him, making a scene like that, does he even understand that? In response, he told him to shut up unless he wanted to get punched in the face. He said that he guessed that Celine was having some conflicting feelings right now after all.
She had a rival out of nowhere.
The protagonist was surprised. What did he mean? He put the glass with the drink on the table and said, "Well, how stupid he is."
He replied that he started this nonsense himself. Well, okay. How is the investigation going that he asked for?
Leto asked why he was rushing him.
Said that it would take a week. His ex-girlfriend's current girlfriends,
and the whole house are looking for this green-haired girl.
He just has to wait a little longer.
MC said that he didn't think it would take so long. He replied that it wouldn't be an investigation
if the answer came to him by himself. The protagonist added, by the way, he has a question for him. Do you think a letter can come from the future? Leto folded his arms across his chest, surprised.
Asked what's wrong with him today.
He keeps saying weird things.
He replied that it would probably be better if he showed it to him.
He took the letter out of his inside pocket
and told him to take a look at it.
Leto, for his part, didn't see anything in his hand and asked him to look at what. He replied, oh no. He told him to look at this letter from the future.
Leto asked, hey, maybe he was poisoned by something.
He ran his hand through the letter and said that there was nothing here. MC was surprised and thought,
what's going on? His hand went right through.
Leto asked him not to tell him that he was cursed with a mental disorder or something like that. The protagonist replied that that was not true.
That's how he found out about the attack on Emma,
and the damage from the magical beasts the other day was also avoided, thanks to what was written here. He asked what else. He replied it further said that a strong magical beast will appear at the hunting festival. Leto clarified the hunting festival. Isn't it natural that there would be a strong opponent, since the fourth years have returned?
He replied that he didn't mean that.
He means that a strong magical beast will appear at this year's hunting festival. Leto said okay. Does he really need to emphasize that? The hunting festival is happening this year. Even though every student in the academy knows about it, the protagonist looked at the letter and thought in surprise, what's going on? Their conversation is not going well at all. Can't he even tell others about the contents of the letter?
Leto then said, let's say he's telling the truth, and there's a high probability
that some kind of time anomaly is happening to him, created to prevent the impending crisis. MC asked in surprise, a crisis? What is it about? He replied that it was a very serious situation, but he was too stupid to understand it. Distortion of space-time can only be achieved through high magic. Even then, only to a limited extent does he understand why.
He scratched his cheek awkwardly and thought. He had a feeling Emma had said something similar before. He then asked because it's hard to use.
He replied, God. It was stupid to even ask. Using something like that would disrupt the world order, so there is a limitation. He can take the extermination of the magical wolf he mentioned earlier. For example, in the future where the letter came from. How was the magical beast killed with the information in the letter?
He has to think about it.
The information he received won't be transmitted until the magical beast is defeated. This would turn the future into the past and the past into the future. The paradox that arises here would throw the order of all things into chaos. In other words, knowing the information about the future means that, if he makes one wrong move, he could cause the destruction of the world. The protagonist asked in surprise, Could he destroy the world?
He replied perhaps that's why he tells him to be careful.
Well,
he thinks that the sender of the letter is trying to prevent problems from occurring, but the distortion in space-time only happens to him.
The information he has is limited. With that said, as long as he doesn't do anything strange, no problem should occur. MC thought no. Even if that's the case, he could still cause the destruction of the world as well. He was just some village noble. So how could he handle all of this alone?
Looking up at the bright sky, he thought, what should he do now?
At that moment,
Elsie Rainella appeared behind him and called out to him, asking if he was the guy who beat up her little brother.
With that, she folded her arms. The protagonist looked at the students gathered around him in surprise. He saw Lupin's face and thought, was she here to get even for that time? Then the brother she was talking about must be him.
She asked, did he really think Ranella's son would stay away
after being beaten by someone like him? He thought, She was the leader of one of the two great factions in the academy. Even though the saintess tried to resolve the situation, he still came after her right. And even bringing his older sister. He was done, for he would just let them beat him up before it escalated into something bigger. At that moment Lupin turned to his sister and asked her not to get involved with that guy. And she replied that running away was pathetic. Then they looked in surprise at the student who had fallen to the ground. Delphine put her hand forward and said oops. Her apologies, he just happened to be in the way. Coming closer, she tossed her hair and asked why she didn't stop acting tough in front of the students. She was an eyesore, Elsie said indignantly. She sees that she has no manners as usual, Yadina. She replied that it was her phrase. She's in the way, so could she please move aside? Elsie yelled at her to just shut up and go somewhere else.
MC watching the scene.
Thought that this was the first time he'd seen this Delphine Sr. up close. Seen her in the newspaper or passing by in the distance before. Since she's Siria's sister, maybe he should talk to her for a bit. Though he thought for a second now, and decided that it would be better if he took this opportunity to get away. From here he headed in the opposite direction. But at that moment, a student put his hand on his shoulder and asked where he was going. Was he trying to escape? Protagonist smiled, put his hands in front of him, and replied that he wasn't. He wouldn't be in time. He then reached for his weapon and thought he really didn't want to fight. But at that moment Elsie yelled, maybe this is it, she likes this guy. Doesn't she? Well, she doesn't mind waiting for one night so she can have fun with him. She smiled and added, but what about him? The poor thing, considering what he already did to her little sister. The next second MC attacked the student and said, Senior Elsie, she can say whatever she wants about him, but he won't let her drag Syria into this. How will she pay for this? She looked at him in surprise and said in fear, he's trying to attack her. The next second the protagonist really ran forward, but swung his weapon and attacked the next student. Another guy ran to attack and shouted, he's an idiot. The protagonist easily dodged his weapon swings, and then swung his weapon and said, too slow, after which he struck his opponent right in the face, slamming his head into the ground. Then he looked forward, and the next second he sharply dodged a lightning strike that hit very close to him. Elsie said okay. That would have been good right away. MC smiled and suggested that they fight fair and square. He had already dealt with the minor problems. She replied he must be crazy. He really thinks he can beat her. He replied that he can't know in advance what he hasn't tried yet. He then pushed off the ground and ran to attack, swinging his axe. He made his attack, but Elsie put her staff in front of her and created a barrier. She sighed and asked, he thinks someone of his level can break her shield. He asked then, how about he try? They will see how long her shield lasts. She smiled and asked, he wants to try to break her shield. He is delusional. Well, at first, he even managed to surprise her, since he managed to beat her guys, putting her staff in front of her. She added, but some third year like him will never win. Before she could finish speaking, the protagonist threw his sword at her. It flew off, hitting the barrier, and she screamed. He's small. He approached her, breaking through the barrier. He grabbed her face and pinned her to the ground, swinging his axe. He said she was not lacking in confidence, but would she continue to babble like that when her shield was broken? Smiling, she thought, so that he wouldn't make her laugh. She was one of the best mages in the academy. Did he really think that if he continued to pound on the shield, it would break? While this fool was completely focused on swinging his axe, she needed to hurry up and cast a spell to crush it. The next second MC struck again. The shield became covered in cracks, and then completely shattered into small pieces. The mage's hands were shaking. She asked him to stop. Tears were streaming down her face and she asked for help. He was surprised. What now? She was suddenly begging for mercy. He had thought she was ready to fight to the death. When she had ridiculed him and Syria, she had responded, but was he really gonna kill her? No, she didn't want to die. He swung his axe and said that in that case, she shouldn't have started this. After all, death was an inevitable part of a battle when honor was at stake. He then thrust the axe into the ground right next to her head, and said that he would let it go for now.
But next time she would be unlucky. This student standing nearby looked on in surprise, and then the protagonist walked forward. Delphine then called him over, and asked if she could borrow some of his time. Next time there was something she wanted to talk to him about. After a while, Leto laughed and pointed at him, saying he wondered who it was. I couldn't believe that he was the axe murderer. The protagonist sighed and asked if he should let him feel real fear. He gave a thumbs up and said, "Well done, he's so cool when he's giving it his all." By the way, there were rumors that he was chatting with Lady Delphine. The protagonist confirmed it. That's how things turned out. Leto asked, but what business did she have with him? He replied, no idea. They were meeting tonight. So for now he just gave her consent to talk anyway. Did he find out who started the bullying of Syria? He confirmed it, that's why he came to see him. After that he handed him a folded note and told him to read it. The protagonist complied with his demands, and Leto leaned over and asked, "What is this? I never thought he'd be so calm." The MC folded his arms and looked away, saying, "It just happened that way." They had a few clues so far. But when he thought about what the reason for the bullying could be, he immediately thought of one. His comrade asked, so his information only confirmed his suspicion. The protagonist confirmed it. He asked then, what will he do now? He answered, first he will see the person in question. What he will do next depends on his answer. Meanwhile, Syria, sitting on a rock in the forest, read the article and said, Mentor Jan fought for her again.
어퍼클래스먼 엘시 어택트 멘토어 젠.
Only because he dealt with the people who were bothering her. She thought that she could handle it on her own. But she was helped again at that moment. The protagonist approached her and asked why she looked so sad. She screamed in fear, Mentor Jan. She hid the article behind her back, and tearfully apologized to him for what happened the other day. She even treated Celine like some kind of villain for no reason. He smiled in response and told her not to worry about it. She had pissed him off back then too. He wasn't angry anymore, so she shouldn't worry. She blushed in embarrassment and looked him in the eye and said, but every time she did nothing but sit and watch him help her. And this time it was the same. He fought the bullies who were bothering her. And even the upperclassman Elsie intervened. The protagonist smiled and said that he was okay, so she shouldn't be embarrassed to rely on him. When one of them got into trouble, they should rely on each other. Next time maybe it would be her turn to help him. She agreed. Then could she hug him? She blushed in embarrassment and MC looked at her in surprise. He thought, wait. She hugged him after all, and he thought,
What the hell is going on?
He awkwardly said, Syria him. She pulled away abruptly and started slapping her cheeks, shouting, it's all because of her mother. She always hugged her when she cried. That's why she didn't upset him, right? She didn't mean to, she just felt that way. And then she looked at the flower growing nearby in surprise and said, Sepia bloomed in such a place. This flower usually only grows in the north. She's never seen it grown this far south. The protagonist thought in surprise, sepia. He completely forgot about it because of the bullying. But the original reason he even approached Syria was to find out whether she was sepia or not. He would take this opportunity to ask. He then asked, does she like this flower, Syria? She happily replied that she did. Her mother liked it, so she likes it too. He thought, with such an emotional connection, maybe she changed her name later. But he doesn't know why she would want to hide her original name. Anyway, that flower must be very important to her. Besides, he's worried about the part in the letter where it said, they got close during the hunting festival. Is Sepia really Syria? If she is, then is she the one he's going to marry in the future? MC closed his eyes and thought, no. No matter how plausible this letter may be, she's just a junior. He shouldn't let this distract him. You should just focus on his main task. Syria, can you ask her one more question? It's a bit personal though. She asked, what is it? He replied, is it definitely decided that Delphine will be the successor of the Yadina house? Is there any chance that she will take that position? She was surprised her. She has neither the qualifications nor the ability to become the successor. Her sister has all the real power, and everyone in the family is supporting her. He replied that he understood her. Her sister was trying to keep her on a short leash. He was surprised keep her on a short leash. He said thoughtfully she was also Yordina's daughter. So if a fight for the place of the heir broke out, she clenched her fist and said that she never contradicted her sister, but always quietly and obediently did what she was told. Her sister never tired of reminding her that, if she was not useful to the family, she would become completely useless, and that she should do what she was told. So she was always on guard. At least that was the case. Until she decided to take part in the hunting festival. But why was he interested in this? She blushed with embarrassment. The protagonist replied that there was no special reason. He put his hand on her shoulder and added, however, he might have to fight his sister soon. So he wanted to know what kind of person she was. Sometime later, the Idlest Hall, a noble dormitory of highborns. The worker bowed and thanked the protagonist for waiting for him. He would lead him into the room. In return he also thanked him and thought, only Lady Delphine and he. It seems that another strange rumor will come across. The worker said, Lady Delphine. Mr. Jan has arrived, she said. Please, he may come in. He thought that this was his only chance to find out the truth. Then he looked inside and asked for forgiveness. She said, welcome. Prince of the Axe, his face instantly turned red with embarrassment. The girl was wearing only a short robe. He wondered in surprise why was she dressed like that. Then he said, Lady Delphine. Perhaps she should change her appearance. She wondered why he didn't like what he saw. He replied that it was not so. It suits her very well, smiling. She said that she was glad to hear it. Please, he should sit down. He sat down on the chair opposite her and added, with all due respect, it might be a good idea to pay more attention to your appearance, in front of a man. She wondered why as she poured the drink into the glass. There was no need. The sight of beautiful things made one want to possess them right. A beautiful female body was one of those things. But for most women a man's desires could be harmful, so they covered their bodies to protect themselves. However, no one could get her. So why would she worry about it? He thought really. There wasn't a single man in the academy who could defeat her. She added besides. It didn't matter much anyway. It seemed like he was still quite naive. He replied that he grew up in the countryside, so he didn't know much about such things. She replied then he should start getting used to it, because it was part of everyday life. He wondered why he felt like she was trying to seduce him. She then said, well, they'll get down to business. He should become her ally. The Axe Prince, he wondered him. She confirmed it. She had never met anyone as interesting and brave as him. Of course, out of all the factions in the academy, he would get the best treatment. He wondered if she was really trying to recruit him, because she wanted him. That couldn't be it. There had to be some other reason. He then looked at her and said, before he gave her an answer, he wanted to ask a question. She asked what was it he asked if she knew about Syria being harassed lately. She replied that she had heard about it. Those people must have no fear at all. Doing something like that to Yordina. MC then said that he had found the student who leaked Syria's personal information, and confirmed that the person had been coming from this dorm, and was coming back here. Delphine, bringing her glass closer to her, asked what he was getting at. He replied that she should let him paint the whole picture for her. The person who spread rumors about Syria's mother was from Yordina, the type who had the connections and status to make many people pursue someone. And lastly, they knew the personal information about Syria's mother, something only family members knew. Taking all this into account, there could only be one person behind this, and that person was her Delphine. Yordina, she smiled and said that she thought he was reckless, but he was surprisingly meticulous. Why would she pursue her beloved younger sister? He replied that she might not have had a reason to do so before, but she did now, didn't she? Because the always obedient Syria decided to fight her during the hunting festival. Delphine folded her arms under her chest, and said that what he said made sense. But if there was no evidence? The protagonist said that if that's what she wanted, he would get that green-haired student. She said that was enough, she was behind it. To be honest, she was planning on leaving her alone, but then she said that she was going to challenge her during the hunting festival, so she had to teach her to never cross her mistress. The protagonist was surprised. Cross her mistress? Syria just wants to prove herself. She replied anyway. Does he have any intention of becoming her ally? Extending the glass closer to him, she added, because honestly she didn't expect his abilities to be that impressive. The next second he used an axe to knock the glass out of her hand, and said that he would have to refuse, 'cause working under a scheming person like her seemed too difficult. She said, "Oh my God. Is she that obvious?" putting the broken glass down, she added, but she took out a weapon from the bandage on her leg, and holding it to his neck, asked she couldn't just let it end like this. Could she? He said. So she hid the weapon on her. She smiled and said she needed at least a little protection. However, as the conversation went on, she became more interested in him. With these words, she scratched her head with the weapon and then pointing it forward, said, but hesitating at the crucial moment is quite a rare gift. It makes her want to train him to become her hunting dog. He smiled and said so she would believe it. She would regret it. She laughed and asked, did she regret anything if that ever happened? Then she must be defeated at that hour. In any case, he suggested that they leave the topic for today. It was time for him to go back. He said he would gladly do so. But he was not finished yet. With that he swung his axe. Delphine swatted it away with her hand. The blade of his weapon grazed her shoulder. He looked at her in surprise and she swung again, thinking he's still far from her. The axe prince. Then she knocked the axe out of his hands and thought, don't be too upset. If it was anyone else but her, it would have worked. Then should she make sure he completely loses his will? Then she leaned down to deliver another blow. MC gritted his teeth and she stopped the blade near his neck. At that moment the protagonist moved his sword to her neck. She thought, this boy. The moment he lost his axe, he drew his sword without hesitation, as if he didn't initially expect to cope with just an axe. He said that he thought she had the wrong impression of him. Well, since she called him the Axe Prince, because his main weapon has always been a sword. She smiled and asked he really intended to get rid of her, right? He wouldn't have caught her off guard without such determination. But he shouldn't misunderstand. It doesn't mean he won. MC asked what she meant. She is the strongest in the academy. So the fact that he was able to bring her to this point is tantamount to defeat. She bit her lip and thought that he was right. If you forget about being caught off guard, this is the first time she has been beaten up so badly. Maybe that's why she's becoming so greedy. After that she said, not at all, he said seriously. How stubborn is she? She said. Prince of the Axe. The outcome of this battle must be clearly determined. The next second the robe flew off her body. She tried to cover herself with her hands. The protagonist blushed in embarrassment and shouted, Lady Delphine. A little at that moment, the maid outside the door said, Mistress Delphine, may she come in? They were very noisy, so she was worried and came to check if everything was okay. Delphine shouted that everything was okay. Then the maid finally opened the door and, seeing what was happening, shouted, sincerely apologizes. Please, she must forgive her for her rude behavior. Then she immediately ran away. And Delphine, blushing with embarrassment, said she must wait. This is not what it seems. Then the protagonist reached for his axe and asked, what is this? Why is his axe lying here? Then heading for the exit and bowing, he suggested that they just agreed that this time he lost. Well then, good night. And then the door closed behind him. After some time, student turning to his comrade asked, should he say has he heard of Lady Delphine? He asked, is he talking about a student named John, who came to her dorm and caused a stir there? He confirmed it. Apparently he threatened her, a defenseless lady with an axe. He guesses he's the type of person who starts swinging an axe whenever he's in a bad mood, right? The student said he's known this guy for 3 years, but he never thought he'd be such a scumbag. Hiding his true nature is much scarier than hiding his abilities, right? The student replied, come on. Then he was surprised. Turning around, he saw the protagonist and said, he didn't say anything bad. The next second they ran away in the opposite direction in fear. One of them shouted, "It's the Axe Prince. He has to run, otherwise he'll kill him." The protagonist sighed and said. Another strange rumor appeared. Again he thought, how did the news of what happened spread so quickly? He can't help but think that someone is deliberately spreading rumors about him. Then he looked at the wall. There was a notice posted saying 12 days until the hunting festival. The hunting festival schedule was revealed. The hunting festival, the great emperor idolist's favorite holiday, would be held on the 30th. The participants who caught the strongest beast in the forest would be proclaimed champions. A special prize would be given to the group that caught the most beasts. The application period was from midnight on the 16th to 6 o'clock in the evening on the 23rd. Participation requirements open to all students regardless of year, faculty or academic performance. Applications must be submitted in groups of 4. He thought since he had decided to participate, he had better register soon. But right now it was just him and Syria. Where would he find 2 more people? And then he said, I'd like to have at least 1 mage on the team. He thought having protection was important. Should he just invite Leto? Now after a while, his comrade gave him a fist bump. There was no way in hell he would join them. MC made a cute face and said, come on, he shouldn't say that. They should go together, Leto. He yelled indignantly, what was he picking on? He replied that he just wanted him to join them. He said stop it. He was disgusting, but a mage was a good idea. The protagonist said okay. If he wasn't going to join them, then he should at least introduce him to a good mage. Leto thought a good mage must be like that. Yeah, Jean. He should just follow his words. There was a news ad on the table.
더 인퍼머스 LC 레넬러.
Was it really over for her? He said if he did this right, he would definitely get himself a mage. After a while the student asked, well, does she have a last wish? Elsie, looking at him seriously, shouted, he can't make fun of her just because of 1 loss. Swinging her fist she added, he shouldn't underestimate her. The student, kneeling, tried to turn away and shouted for her to forgive him. She said okay. If he can endure the next 10 seconds without making a sound, she will close her eyes to it. She concentrated energy in her hand and prepared to attack. She shouted that she will regret interfering at that moment. The MC approached them and asked upperclassman Elsie, what is she doing? She shouted for him not to interrupt her. Then she turned around, noticing him, and the protagonist asked if he could take up some of her time. With these words he showed her his axe. She looked at it in fear. After a while, the student ran off the court. Elsie lowered her head and said that everyone had left. The protagonist scratched his neck, thinking that she was listening to him completely. He remembered Leto's words, who said that if she showed the slightest sign of disobedience, he should just flash the axe. He would do it and everything would be solved. He thought, but Leto, doesn't that make him a terrible person? And then he sighed and said that he just wanted to talk. So she shouldn't worry, she asked in surprise. Talk? She had nothing to talk about with him. He came closer, she begged him to stop. She shrank her whole body and screamed that she would do whatever. He said, please just put the axe away. The protagonist put his hand on her hat and said, that must have been hard. She wiped a tear from her cheek and said, idiot. The protagonist scratched his cheek and asked, why is he an idiot? She answered, because he was the reason everyone was laughing at her. They were saying that she was an idiot, crying after losing to a 3rd year. He answered seriously, but she was crying. She was indignant. She wasn't crying. He laughed and said, so be it then. She wiped the tears from her face again and added, anyway, it was all his fault. He asked, really? Actually, he intended for this whole situation to end with him getting beaten up. But then she knows who showed up. Elsie asked Delphine. You're Dina, he said. Exactly. So why doesn't she get revenge on Delphine? She asked how. He said. Delphine said that she was going to win this year's hunting festival, to bring honor to her family. If she failed, it would be a great shame for her house. Elsie clenched her fist and said, it served her right. The protagonist added, In that case, would she like to join him at the hunting festival? She asked in surprise, but why is she with him? The protagonist looked at her in surprise and she added, never mind, that's not what she meant. The MC closed his eyes and said, he knows she doesn't think highly of him. But would she really be okay with just standing by and watching? Delphine Wynne Elsie clenched her fists in indignation and said, she was going crazy. Just thinking about how that idiot was showing off. The protagonist said that's why he was asking her to join him. If they teamed up they would definitely win. She thought about it and then put her hands on her waist and said okay. Okay, she feels like he's leading her on. But for now she'll agree. The protagonist thought, then he's done with the main part.
LC the upperclassman.
Will use support magic, waiting for the right moment to strike hard. He would block the enemy's attacks from the front. And create an opening from the flank. And from that opening Syria would deliver a powerful blow. He looked up at the sky and thought. But if they did that, he would have the important task of keeping the enemy's attention. He would be there mostly just for defense. That's why they needed another person. That is someone as skilled as him or even better than him, and with whom he had great synergy. Syria and Celine both came from a line of hunters, so they would be useful when it came to tracking down magical beasts. He remembered how Syria asked her to draw her sword, and he said, even though he was a little worried about putting those two together on the same team now was not the time to be picky. He thought he would have to do his best to convince her. After a while, Syria grabbed the protagonist by his shirt. He was surprised. Syria, what the hell is she doing? She looked him in the eye and asked him what he did with her older sister yesterday. He asked yesterday. And then he awkwardly scratched his cheek and looked away and said, yesterday Lady Delphine and him. She said Mentor Jan he. I was just thinking about another girl, right? He objected, that's not true. She asked herself, then she let go of him and lowered her gaze and said, this fool wants a Mentor Jan. Let him swear to stay with her. She nervously began to bite her fingernail, and MC looked at her and thought, are there rumors again? In any case, now is not the time for this. Then he said, despite this, everything is basically decided with the participants. He thought that they need a mage. So he invited an upperclassman, Elsie. Syria folded her hands in front of her in admiration and said, with her they don't have to worry about attack power. He said regarding the last member. He thought it should be Celine. She was surprised she would only bring unnecessary arguments. The protagonist answered, but she has no equal in skill. Syria lowered her gaze again and added, she doesn't like people who always start conflicts. MC thought it wouldn't be that easy. They were like oil and water. But even so he couldn't back down. Now they had to participate in the hunting festival and win. Then he put his hand on her shoulder and said that he knew it might be difficult. But could she trust him at least once? She replied okay. She would believe his words. Mentor Jan, he smiled and thought, great. Now he's dealt with Syria too. Only Celine was left. If she joined his team, would be complete, but would she agree to it? After a while he came to the yard. Celine was sitting on a bench. Approaching her, he asked how she was doing seeing him. She asked in surprise, Jan. Then she stood up and said that she was really sorry about what happened. He told her not to worry about it. It happened, she asked. Did that mean they made up? Then would he like to eat together tomorrow since he left for so long? He said we agreed. But first he wanted to ask her for something. He awkwardly scratched the back of his head and asked if she wanted to go to the hunting festival with him. She was surprised. The hunting festival. He confirmed it. He was going to team up with Syria. But they were short-handed anyway. And of course he knew they didn't get along with each other. But she interrupted him and said okay. She'll go. He smiled and asked, really? Is she sure? She smiled shyly back and replied, of course, after all. No one works with him as well as she does. Obviously she'll have to go. The protagonist smiled and thought that she agreed to it, faster than he thought. With Elsie and Syria being the best in the academy, they don't have to worry about attack power. He knows about the gap in defense thanks to the letter, so they have a good chance of winning. The problem is teamwork. One is always picking fights while the other has zero social skills. Also Syria and Celine always bicker as soon as they see each other. So it definitely won't be a cakewalk. He clenched his fist and thought. First they need to learn to work together. Great, he'll make them go through safe. Practical training. They won't fight in a situation of real danger. Right after a while, everyone gathered in one place. The protagonist thought how awkward. Elsie, with her arms folded, asked how he can call this a team. Even if the two of them don't get along, the least they can do is talk to each other. The protagonist tapped her on the shoulder and then showed her the axe. She screamed in fear that she was sorry. She wouldn't choke anymore. He leaned over and asked she promised, right? She confirmed it. He then adjusted the hat on her head and said, "It's hard enough as it is. No need to add fuel to the fire." She said, "But there's no way they can train like this." "It's not that they can't," but Celine said. "If they're just going to stand there and chat, then why not postpone the training until tomorrow?" The protagonist said, "Oh right. They'll have a special guest joining them soon." Elsie was surprised. A special guest? A lowly noble like him can't have a connection to. The next second there was an explosion next to them.
A smoke screen rose up as she screamed in alarm.
What, coming out of a smoke? Derek asked, "Is everyone here? Is this where the people who want to become monster hunters are?" He was a legendary monster hunter. Students then bowed and the MC confirmed it. He asked him to take care of them. Professor Elsie pointed her finger at him and shouted in surprise, "Monster hunters, she's not interested in this." Before she could finish speaking, the protagonist showed her the axe again, and she shouted with tears in her eyes, "But of course she'll join." The professor said okay. He suggested starting by testing their level. They should pretend he was a monster. They need to find him within 2 hours and deal the finishing blow. Elsie screamed it would be easy. "He just has to wait, old man." The next second, the professor disappeared behind the trees and MC asked, "Well, shall they go then?" They were walking along a path in the forest. Syria looked around, said, as expected of the professor. She couldn't feel him at all. The protagonist said since this was just a test, he could at least make things a little easier with this. But he disappeared pretending to be a magical beast, leaving no trace. Celine added, "There should be some traces left if you look carefully." Protagonist looked at her and noticed that she lived up to her hunting origins. She replied, "Of course. Spoiled high nobles wouldn't understand anyway." Elsie asked sheepishly, "What did she say? Even she understands things like that." Syria added, "She has some hunting experience too." Celine turned around and asked, "Oh my God, is she annoyed?" "What happened?" She replied, "That she was just saying that." She thought it was unfair to assume that she didn't understand anything, because she was a spoiled high noble. The protagonist then said, "That's enough." He found the traces, so he had to go there. Celine, blushing with embarrassment, looked at him and said happily, as expected of her, "Jan, it's probably because he hunted with her." He replied, "Maybe it's time to focus." She pointed at herself and asked, "Does he remember the first time he said he was going with her?" Syria said they weren't here to fool around, so please she needed to focus. Celine looked at her and wondered what. She was jealous because she couldn't join their conversation. Syria furrowed her brows, got angry and asked, "Are you sure she was the one being jealous?" So what if she was with her mentor Celine? He only let her join because they needed to recruit people, but she was being so hostile. Syria asked, "Recruit people?" If that's what she thought, then she was asking her to stop. Celine yelled for a sullen introvert. She was certainly being arrogant. She said everything she wanted to say right at that moment. Derek, who was on a tree branch above them, said, "Guys, have you forgotten that magical beasts don't back down that easily?" MC turned around in surprise and shouted for everyone to run. The next second the professor jumped down to the ground and asked, "Not only are they not hiding their presence, but they are also fighting each other. As long as this is the case, he can't teach them anything." He then noticed the magical aura enveloping the students, and looked at Elsie and said, "To use support magic so quickly. She's more capable than she looks, mage." She concentrated the energy in her hands and replied, "Of course, she is the best mage among the 4-year-old man." He snatched the magic wand from her hands and asked, "But what will she do? Her teammates don't seem to be on the same level. Just look at him hiding there in ignorance, leaving the mage, the most important member of the team, unguarded." The protagonist, looking at Syria, thought, "Damn, if they regroup, they can take advantage of their numerical superiority." And then he saw Syria running forward. He yelled at her not to go. As the student approached the professor, he asked why she allowed herself to be provoked, easily dodging her attack. He added that in situations like this, you should talk to your teammates and work together. He then hit her on the back of the neck and she fell to the ground. He asked, "So what are the two of them planning on doing now?" The protagonist looked at the students and thought that Elsie couldn't continue. But maybe Syria. He then turned to Celine and told her to go there and help Elsie. She was the strongest, so if they wanted to fight. But she responded in the negative, and said that even without her could fight normally. MC was indignant. Seriously. Even in their situation she yelled she hates how much he cares about her. Derek stood in front of the protagonist and said, "I thought he said before that monsters don't wait." After a while he folded his arms and concluded, "What a mess, no hint of teamwork. Celine Hester, why is she on this team?" The protagonist, rising to his feet, thought that they would work together because of the danger of practical training, but they still continue to quarrel over every little thing. He must do something about this. After a while Celine took a shower. Stopping in place, she said, "Jan." She remembered the protagonist's words about him, saying that everything was fine. It was not her fault. Then she left the room and noticed a note on the floor. She read the contents. It said that she should come to the clearing in the eastern forest. At 10:30 he wanted to talk to her about something. She noticed Jan's handwriting. I wonder what it is about. Is he going to scold her because of what happened during their training? After a while she came to the clearing and asked what happened. MC looked at her and she asked what he wanted from her at this hour. He said he wanted to talk to her about something, right? He furrowed his brows and said she should tell him how long she planned to keep provoking Syria. She was indignant. When did she do that? She spread her arms out and added, "That rude fool has gone too far." Before she could finish speaking, the protagonist said, even a blind man could see that she had been provoking her. The whole time she replied, "Okay." So she was doing it on purpose. She was annoying her. The protagonist stated he had heard enough. She should come to him. It seemed there was only one way to end this problem once and for all. Salim then asked in surprise, "A duel? What was he saying?" And then he threw her a sword and told her to take it. She asked him to wait a second. A real sword, he confirmed it. After a real duel she would not be able to justify herself anymore. She replied, "That is not true." She means, why should they fight? He replied, "Since talking leads nowhere, let the winner decide what happens. They always decided everything this way, right?" She remembered how as a child he ran away from her and said that if he won this race, then they would face off. She ran after him and shouted indignantly, "Why is he deciding this on his own?" She asked, "He has not changed at all, right?" "Okay, then this is probably better than feeling depressed all the time." She held the sword in her hands and getting into a stance asked, "And how will they decide the winner?" He replied, "Whoever gives up loses." Then he put the sword in front of him and shouted, "In that case they will begin." She lunged forward in lightning speed. MC swung. Raising his sword up, she also raised her sword above herself, and he thought, what? It's no surprise that she's better than him in magic. Then she slashed in front of her. The protagonist flew to the side and thought, but to that extent. He skidded to a stop on the ground and perplexed shouted, "Did she drink a potion there?" She said that the evil spirit that possessed him taught her that it's better to put all her strength into one blow. At first she thought that all this was just nonsense. She can't believe that it actually worked. The protagonist, resting his hand on his knee, thought, "That damn evil spirit again taught her unnecessary things." Then she got into a stance again and said, "Now that it came to this, she will definitely win. He must prepare himself after that." She swung her sword again for a blow. And he thought, each blow is getting stronger and stronger. If he gets even one, it will be over. But her movements are slowing down. She slashed her sword in front of him again. He thought after the attack. She opens up. He concentrated his energy and attacked in front of him. But Celine rolled behind him and hit him in the back. He gritted his teeth, turned around, and she attacked again. Trying to hit his legs, she screamed, "He can't block this with one hand." Then she swung her sword, throwing away the protagonist's weapon. He swung his axe and said, "Damn." How did she dodge? She put her hand to her chest and said, "Everyone knows he uses an axe." He thought, looks like he'll have to change his strategy after all. Then he threw the axe forward. She screamed, "He thinks throwing will change anything." Then she asked in surprise, "Sword?" The flying sword was approaching her and she threw it away, swung her sword screaming, "Is he crazy?" After that, the protagonist caught the axe and threw it forward again, knocking the sword out of Celine's hands. She knelt down and thought. Her sword, she reached for her weapon. But MC charged and shouted. Too slow. He thought that he would aim for her arm. This way he would be able to minimize his injuries, and she would not be able to attack anymore. She, seeing the weapon approaching, pointed her weapon forward, and he thought if things went like this, he would not hit her arm. The sword was aimed straight at her heart. The next second the protagonist's sword stopped near her chest, but Celine's sword pierced the protagonist's arm. She thought pierced his arm to stop the sword. If he hadn't done it, she probably would have. Then the protagonist placed his trembling hand on her head and said, "Celine, he won." He smiled. She looked up at him sheepishly and said, "Jan." He said he wants to. She stated that now he needs to undergo treatment. He added that she should apologize to Syria and give her all at the hunting festival. She asked seriously, and this is his wish. There are so many other things he could do. Before she could finish speaking, the protagonist fell to the ground. She called him in fear. After a while, the protagonist woke up from the sun's rays falling on his bed. Raising himself to a sitting position, he closed his eyes. Celine stood next to him and asked if he was finally awake. He was surprised. Had he been here all night? She stretched her whole body and confirmed it. As luck would have it, his injuries weren't too serious. He added, "Exactly. It didn't hurt that much." Celine then turned around and saw Syria standing in the doorway. She called her in surprise. MC, noticing her, asked why she was here.
시리어 오킹클로서
Said that the saint told her that he was seriously injured. Celine looked away and then stood up. Syria looked at her in surprise. And Celine said that she was sorry that she always started fights with her. Wouldn't happen again. The protagonist, despite her, thought, "Good job, Celine." But she shouldn't complain. If she won't forgive her, it's up to her to accept the apology or not. Syria replied it didn't bother her anymore, and Celine, still nervous, asked, "Really?" She confirmed it because it was always like that. Then she smiled sheepishly and added, "And since it was her fault too." She accepted her apology. She suggested getting along in the future. They shook hands and Celine, smiling, agreed. She suggested communicating well. Her partner agreed with her. MC thought everything went better than he expected, so nothing should hinder them anymore. At the hunting festival, everyone in their team is very talented, but they had some internal conflicts. He put his good hand to the bandaged one and thought, now that those are resolved, all that remains is to improve their teamwork. Then the saint entered the room and, smiling, said that he seemed to be feeling much better. Could they both leave the room so she can treat Mr. Jan? The protagonist thought in surprise, what? Why was he suddenly shaking? Celine bowed before the saint and said, "He is a very important person to her, so please she should take care of him." She replied, "Of course she understands. However, if he is so important to them, then they should make sure that he does not get hurt." Celine said that she understands and then left the room. The saint then turned to Saria and asked her to leave the room, and then she asked, "Is something wrong?" She replied, can she really not stay? The saint, still smiling, asked. Why is she his fiancée? She shouted.
No way, she asked.
Then is she his lover?
Soraya shouted, that is not true at all. She replied, in that case. He pushed her out of the room and asked her to leave the room. After that she locked the doors and, turning to the protagonist,
told him to hold out his hand. He held out his hand to her,
and said that she shouldn't have kicked them out of the room. Like that she pressed his injured hand.
He cried out in pain, and she added,
he doesn't intentionally hurt himself all the time,
to impress the ladies right.
No matter what happens, he shouldn't get hurt anymore.
She started to turn his hand and he cried out,
but the way things were going,
she would make him get hurt even more. She noticed that he was getting hurt too often lately. If he got hurt again, he might get irreversible things.
He was surprised, really.
He would be more careful, she added.
This was her advice as a responsible priestess. If he was planning on participating in the hunting festival,
please, he shouldn't do it.
With that she sat down on the chair opposite the bed and said,
his body is at its limit, Mr. Jan. The protagonist sat down on the edge of the bed and thought, even if she said so, just cannot go.
After that she stood up and asked him to promise her okay.
He replied okay.
At that moment Yurin entered the room and asked,
what's going on? It seemed pretty serious.
He'd only been gone for a month and something had already happened.
He was a third-year student at the academy, and the protector of the Saint MC. Seeing him, smiled and said, Yurin. He said he was going to the Holy Kingdom, right? He replied, that's right.
He went there and sorted out some matters. The saint, looking at him, said,
welcome back. Did he return the item safely?
He, reaching into his inside pocket, confirmed it and apologized for taking longer than planned. The old man continued to insist that he couldn't. Then he handed her the box and said, here is a blood crystal. The protagonist asked in surprise.
A blood crystal? He confirmed it. It is one of the holy treasures bestowed by the saint, the only one of its kind in the entire kingdom. By using it, the saint's healing power will be strengthened.
As long as there is still life in a person,
he can be saved, the protagonist asked.
As long as there is still life in a person,
he can be saved, the saint confirmed it. It can also cure Mrs. Emma. However, it is an especially valuable item. She looked at the box in her hands and added, so unless there is an emergency, and the use of this has not been authorized by the Holy Kingdom, the crystal cannot be used. We would like to save Emma,
but please, he must understand that she cannot use this.
He replied that he understands. She said then she asked them to forgive her.
에마어 젠 플리즈.
He must keep his promise, okay? Then they left the room. The protagonist sighed and said if he had a choice,
he would also prefer not to go. He placed his hand on the other hand and said,
but there is a lot at stake here.
He promised Syria that they will win.
Plus, if a high-ranking magical beast appeared, they could use it to save Emma. And above all, if he ignored the letter's warning,
it could lead to serious incidents.
He was sorry. He would try his best not to get hurt.
With that he untied the bandages on his hand.
8th day before 6th day. 5th day. The protagonist looked ahead and said, well then will they go? The rest of the team walked behind him.
They stopped near the tent. Elsie folded her arms and asked,
this motley group managed to get together, huh? At least they should not drag each other down.
MC looked at her and said,
they were all trying their best as if their lives depended on it, right?
She confirmed that was true. But the basics were still the basics. A real fight was very different. He noticed that she was right.
But at least they could work in unison now.
So the next second a dagger flew at him. Swinging his axe sharply, he threw it aside.
He saw Delphine.
I noticed that they hadn't seen each other for a long time.
He shouted indignantly, that was really dangerous.
She asked, geez. Wasn't he exaggerating? He could have easily dodged right.
Coming closer, she added anyway. She just wanted to come by and say hello,
and something to say to her little sister.
Syria looked at her in fear and she said, Syria, she should give up and retreat. She's good at this first letter 9th part, but I am grateful to the dean from the bottom of my heart. From that day on our relationship became even closer. Plus it was the first time I won the hunting festival. I wondered what would happen when I faced that monster. But thanks to you I managed to survive. Even now I still have doubts. How did you know everything about that monster? How did you figure out that its weakness was its horns? The protagonist furrowed his brows and thought, this is the most unpleasant thing to say to his sister. Now she's telling her to give up. Even if she's the future head of their family, this is simply outrageous. Elsie shouted indignantly. Is she out of her mind? They have to win the hunting festival, so she shouldn't interfere. She shouted, who the hell is she? Delphine said with a smirk. But she's talking to her sister. Elsie clenched her fist and shouted. Does she even have a brain? Telling her to give up now is the same as telling them to give up the competition. The main character, stretching out his hands to her, asked her to calm down. He put his hands on her shoulders, and thought that he was about to intervene unwittingly, but thanks to the fuss she had made, he felt much calmer now. Delphine added, could they, the outsiders, not interfere? She was talking to Syria. Her sister's words floated up in the student's mind, telling her to keep in mind that she would never defeat her, and if she did not prove herself useful, she would suffer the same fate as her. So she should not even try to oppose her. Then the next second MC called her and said she was no longer a child who just sat and watched. She should not be afraid. That was why she was participating in this competition. She clenched her fist and said she must forgive her sister. Just this once she would not back down. Delphine smiled and asked, is that so? Well, to be honest, she was glad to hear that. It had been an eternity with their sisterly rivalry. It would be boring if it ended that easily. Well, then she should climb as much as she wants Syria. After that she turned around and walked in the opposite direction. The protagonist threw a dagger at her and shouted,
레이디 델핀 씨 퍼가트 썸씽.
Omar suddenly appeared in front of her, and deflected his attack by throwing the dagger back with an axe. The protagonist, after catching it, asked, don't they want to return it? She replied, he can keep it as a reward for deflecting her surprise attack. The protagonist looked at the weapon in his hands, and wondered what to do with it. He then put it in his inside pocket and said, okay, he'll keep it. Omar approached him and said, he's really good with an axe. True to his nickname, he asked, who is he? Elsie explained that it was Omar the Double Axe. He was quite a famous mercenary among the 4th years. It seemed that he had caught his interest as the brother of the axe. Omar, swinging the axe, asked to let him show his axe skills to another connoisseur of this beautiful weapon. Then he started juggling axes. Protagonist thought, what does he want? Should he knock the axe out of his hands? Omar asked, what does he think? Before he could finish speaking, the MC knocked the axe out of his hand. Omar shouted in surprise, what? He dodged the protagonist's attack and said, how impudent of him to suddenly swing the axe. He replied that he just decided to show off his skills in response. Isaiah came up to them and shouted, hey, why is he stunned and not the other way around? Omar replied, he's just trying to show him his axe skills. Then Furman came up to them and said, Omar, it's time. He replied, okay, Furman. Hey, if he's interested in joining the circus, he should come to their circle. The protagonist was surprised, what? And then their team turned in the opposite direction. Delphine said, well then, see you soon in the forest. Axe Prince Celine asked why they came here. Just looking for someone to fight. The protagonist replied that he didn't know the hell. Who knows what's going on in her head? After a while, the host announced that before the competition began, they needed to go over the rules again. As they know, the hunting festival is very simple. Each team has until 8 in the evening to catch a magical beast. Afterwards, the judges evaluate the strength of the captured monsters and determine the ranking of the teams. Well, the competition is about to begin. She asks all the participants to gather at the starting point. MC thought anyway, when they caught this horned monster, he would get rid of these annoying letters. He just had to wait. He would finish it off and win this competition. 3 hours after the start of the hunting festival, the protagonist's team was walking along the path. Elsie, putting her hand on her waist, said that they had to catch something soon, or they would have to say goodbye to their victory. They had been searching the area for 3 hours already, and still hadn't found anything. Celine, looking at the small creature, noticed that she was right. They had only caught small fry. What should they do? They had to catch something. Otherwise they would really be disqualified. He replied that he understood. He thought, why didn't the letter say anything about the location of this beast? Syria then told them to wait. Something was wrong. She didn't feel any presence around them at all. Celine said since she mentioned it, the forest was too quiet. The protagonist thought this was just like the last time he encountered a high-ranking magical beast. Then all the animals disappeared. Elsie said after 3 hours, their troubles were finally starting to pay off, pointing her finger forward. She added she felt strong magic in that direction. At the very least it should be a high-ranking magical beast. The protagonist looked in that direction and thought, if Elsie said so, there is no doubt about it. It is that horned monster. He then told everyone to remain vigilant. Everyone looked in different directions. After a while they saw many animal bodies. Protagonist thought this. Syria said, it is not just animals, yes. Even magical beasts. What happened? The protagonist walked forward and thought, the high-ranking magical beast that attacked Emma did the same. This beast, he thought, that he was just cutting his victims to show off his strength. He did not expect to see his parents doing the same. At this moment, the horned wolf-like monster continued to devour animals. Noticing the protagonist's team, it bared its teeth. The MC shouted, everyone get ready. The monster attacked the bear in front of it and then threw it aside, standing in front of the protagonist's team. The protagonist shouted they will do it just like they trained. Elsie, her support magic now. She put her magic wand in front of her and shouted shield. The protagonist shouted first, they have to stay on the defensive and figure out its characteristics. Aline, reaching for her sword, said, there are no fallen or damaged trees around. It seems that it has the ability to move, avoiding such obstacles. He gritted his teeth and said in that case, it would be better for him to fight in this open clearing. After that he pushed off the ground and the girls also ran to attack. Elsie threw an acceleration at them. The protagonist, turning around, shouted, Elsie, his weak point is his horn. She was surprised. How did he know this? He shouted for her to just trust him. At that moment Syria swung her sword and tried to attack the monster. It rose up and dodged the attack.
셀린 사우티드 와트 더해.
This beast is too big. Then the monster swung its huge paw. Syria crouched, dodged the attack and thought, well, if she just sneaks up like this. The next second the paw went straight for her. MC shouted they shouldn't be scared. We need to move forward the next second.
셀린 블락트더 만스터즈 포.
Syria moved further, swinging her weapon. She thought at this distance, she can do it. As she struck, she shouted in surprise, what the... The monster seemed to wrap itself around her sword. Instead of attacking, dissolving around it. She shouted, that's impossible. After that the monster stretched its head, bringing it right towards Celine. She shouted in fear at that moment. The protagonist frowned and thought, oh shit. So that's how he could move freely through the forest. He swung his sword and shouted, Celine, she has to get out of the way. Then he threw his sword forward. Syria caught the sword. Celine ran to the side, shouted, what the hell is this? She can't predict his attacks at all, and taking all the hits on herself is too hard. Syria asked what they should do. It will be difficult to act like they trained. The protagonist said that they will have to count on Elsie's magic. He took the sword from Syria's hands and then added, they will not attack, but they will attract as much of his attention as possible. Then the monster ran to attack. MC pushed Celine, saving her from the monster's attack. A powerful explosion occurred on the field. The protagonist flew to the side. Crashing into a tree, his teammate shouted in alarm. Is he okay? He thought. This reckless attack, he is just like a child. Then he got to his feet and shouted for them to beware of his rushes. Celine ran to attack Elsie, said that she will cast a shield again. The protagonist said he is okay. So we need to attack him with something powerful. And they all headed towards the monster. In turn the creature tried to touch them with its paw, repeating its blows again.
셀린 attacking the monster flew to the ground.
The protagonist shouted anxiously Celine. They ran around the monster. Elsie shouted the magic is ready. Must hold it in one place. Everyone concentrated and Saria running forward shouted Mentor Jan. Please, he must cover her. She put the sword in front of her. But the monster hit her with its paw, from which she stopped. The protagonist ran to attack and swung his weapon, attacking right in front of him. The sword flew to the side. Protagonist turning around shouted Elsie. She must hit the horn. She concentrated energy on the end of her magic wand and agreed. She begins, a magic symbol appeared in the air. Energy raging around it. The protagonist thought that he heard that there are no fifth circle mages in the academy. She is incredible. Then he reached for his sword and thought, with such an attack, even this thing will not remain unscathed. Then he wondered, what the hell, damn. This beast has lightning resistance. Then the monster raised its head, roaring loudly.
MC 소트노의.
The letter did not say anything like that. Running away from the monster's attack. He thought, but why lightning resistance? Elsie is not very good at other types of magic. He will have to buy time and come up with a strategy. Then he dodged to the side and thought. There is a small gap between his horn and his body. Slowing to a stop on the ground. He shouted Elsie. They should try again. She was surprised. Didn't he hear her when she said that he was resistant to lightning? It doesn't matter how many times she attacks with lightning. The protagonist swung his axe and said that they don't have time for this. I thought, oh shit. If he is resistant to lightning, of course it makes sense that he would use lightning too. The next second he began to concentrate electrical energy in his mouth. The protagonist's mouth opened in horror, followed by a bright flash of light falling to the ground. First letter 10th, every time I ask. Just give me a smile and say I have my ways. Even now, 7 years later. It's still a mystery. After defeating the beast, we were suddenly attacked. But we were the ones who somehow managed to loot the beast's corpse. And now I guess I'm even grateful for the attack that day. MC shouted Elsie. She has to run. She jumped to the side. Syria ran forward, pushing her further. A stream of lightning flew forward. The girls fell to the ground. Celine swung her weapon, approaching the monster's head, and shouted this. The next second she flew to the side from the monster's attack. The protagonist, approaching the creature, shouted hey. His opponent, he swung his sword. The monster's head went straight to him. Baring its sharp fangs, he struck again and again, moving forward with the monster. He thought, since it does not immediately use lightning again, it must mean that it needs time to recharge. Then he swung his sword again and thought, while Elsie finishes casting her spell, they will have to do everything possible to distract it. Then he flipped in the air and said, too early for him, his turn. He attacked the creature with an axe and shouted, it's not over yet. The monster closed its jaws and then attacked the protagonist, sending him flying backwards. He skidded to a stop on the ground, his leg covered in the monster's magic. He thought, shit. His ankle. The creature was getting closer, opening its mouth wider. He thought, shit. Is this the end for him? At that moment, Saria stood in front of him. She used the secret family swordsmanship of the Edina house. The golden lion sword. Several bursts of energy shot out from her sword,
heading straight for the monster.
But it easily dodged her attack.
Landing behind the lead protagonist key.
Watching this, thought, this can't be. It avoided all those quick strikes. Syria asked, what should we do? Mentor MC, breathing heavily, leaned on his sword and asked, how is Celine? She answered, it seems she still can't move. Celine was sitting by the tree, and he said this is her first real fight. So there is nothing to be done. They will have to handle it together. Elsie shouted hey. She is ready. They have to stop him. They have to stop him from moving again. Then the protagonist said Syria. She has to take his attack at least once. She agreed and added, but what the hell is he planning to do?
He frowned and replied that he has a plan.
She just has to trust him, please.
She said that she understood and put her sword in front of her. Then she ran to attack. Her sword collided with the horn of the monster. She braked on the ground using all her strength.
Then the monster threw its head back. The protagonist pushed off the ground.
Flew up swinging his axe. The monster grabbed his hand and he shouted, "This is what he wanted, damn this monster." He then attacked the creature in the face with the axe. After that he reached for his sword
and thought that he would take this chance and hit him.
Then he plunged the sword into the monster's head.
The creature shook its head from side to side,
throwing the protagonist aside, and then began to concentrate energy in its mouth. The protagonist chuckled too slowly. The next second Elsie shouted that she was starting.
A flash of energy hit the monster.
It threw its head back, screamed loudly,
and then its body trembled. MC pointed at his head and asked, "How is that for him to be burned from the top of his head?"
He means the monster fell to the ground and he thought, even if he has resistance to lightning,
he will not withstand it if he hits from the inside.
That is, by this point,
everything from his brain to his organs should have melted.
This is the end for him, the monster. Elsie said he is not pretending to be dead, right?
He really died, right? The protagonist pulled the sword out of the monster's head and confirmed it. This was their first catch.
Elsie happily grabbed the monster by the horn and said,
he could definitely brag about it. It was definitely a monster with a name. Syria asked, did she mean it was a named monster? MC thought so, it was a named monster after all. Then maybe Emma would succeed. He then said, it looks like they've almost secured their victory.
Syria clenched her fists and sheepishly said, victory.
The protagonist looked at her and thought,
how cute. Celine seemed to be okay too. He guessed he was the only one with a serious injury. If he was the only one hurt, all the better. He held his injured arm and said, everyone did a good job, now all that's left is to carry him away.
Elsie spread her arms out to the sides and said, they'll rest for a bit and then go.
There's no need to rush, there's still plenty of time left.
The protagonist said, that's not it.
Maybe it's not over yet, but if someone is nearby.
Then he thought, wait. The letter definitely said that. He quickly looked away at that moment. Omar attacked Celine with an axe. The protagonist called out to her in alarm. At that moment a dagger was flying straight at him. He swung his weapon, throwing the dagger aside. Berman was heading straight for him and grabbing his arm, knocked him to the ground. The protagonist hit his head.
Delphine came out into the clearing and said,
oh my God, what a pity.
Elsie screamed. They.
Isaiah came up to her, and concentrating energy on the end of her magic wand said, please, she must not move, okay? Delphine went to Syria and said, if they came out with this, they would definitely win. But of course that still won't happen.
What are they planning to fight her, Syria?
She looked down at this moment.
Celine was trying to fight off Omar's attacks.
Asia froze. Elsie with magic MC was lying motionless on the ground. Syria, holding her sword in front of her, confirmed that she would not retreat. Her sister smiled. How funny. She should already know well. She swung her sword trying to attack her sister,
then added a kick to her stomach,
and said that she was no match for her. Syria flew back and then stopping her sword on the ground. She said she knows. But she can't just sit back and watch.
Because she's not a child who can only cry anymore.
She concentrated energy and swung her sword above her head. Delphine asked, it seems like she's matured a little, right, Syria? They both ran to attack. Many flashes of energy flying in different directions.
Turning around, Delphine said, in light of this, she will not kick her out of the family.
As long as she is the head of this. The next second wounds opened on Syria's shoulders. She fell to the ground. The protagonist shouted, isn't this too much? Aren't they ashamed to chase after her injured little sister? Furman, still holding his hands,
asked him to calm down and be quiet. Otherwise his wound will open.
Delphine said, Furman.
Doesn't he think he's being too kind to his enemy? If they are making noise, then he should just knock them out.
The protagonist shouted, "This is unfair." She smirked, "Unfair? So what? It's their fault. Guys for letting their guard down. Isn't it?" reaching for her weapon. She walked up to the monster and added, "Don't they know not to let their guard down until the very end?"
The protagonist asked how she knew where they were. She snapped her fingers and replied,
"A dagger." She cast a tracking spell on the dagger she gave him. "Well, it was just insurance."
She didn't really think it would be useful.
The protagonist thought it's his fault.
Because of him, Elsie, Celine and Saria too. Now everyone is hurt. He was such an idiot to take that dagger.
Damn, he's fainting. Delphine said, "Oh my God. The Axe Prince looks like he's about to faint." He thought, at this rate,
he can't follow what the letter said. What will happen then? What will happen? Emma will die after losing Syria.
Will no longer be able to bear the cold attitude of her family,
and will eventually leave home. And when he appears, the world will end.
His friends and family, even those he loves, everyone. He remembered the words of the girl who asked him not to forget.
He thought if only he had Emma's magic potion.
No, if only Syria could greatly increase in strength after winning.
He should open his eyes already,
so as not to lose the people dear to him. At this moment Delphine walked up to the monster and said,
"Maybe she was too harsh." She thought about it. But it can't be helped after all.
In this world the main rule is that the strongest survive. The next second MC swung his axe and ran at her. Sharply he turned around in surprise. The axe flew a little further.
Furman grabbed his head, screaming in pain.
At this moment the protagonist rose to his feet and smirking asked, "Will they fight?"
Madame Hyaris, she thought. It looks like his nose was cut.
The bleeding does not stop at this rate. The blood will get into his airways,
and Furman will not be able to move for a while. That axe just now, how did she miss it?
The protagonist, trembling all over, held the sword in front of him. He thought everything hurts. His head started dancing, but for some reason he is full of energy.
If he is in this state, he can definitely do it.
Then Omar said, "Hey, Prince of the Axe." Omar double axe promises he will pay for wounding Furman.
Then he abruptly jumped to the side as MC threw a sword at him.
He grabbed him by the shoulder. Omar shouted, "What the?" After that,
the protagonist flipped him in the air and threw him to the ground. Taking his sword, he asked, "What the hell? Isn't he going to make him pay?"
He then stabbed his weapon into the opponent's shoulder. He screamed in pain. Isia called out to him in alarm, then concentrated energy around herself and screamed,
"Okay, then it should float. She will add some holes to it."
IC 사워즈 플루스트레이됐더 프로테거니스트.
But he walked forward, throwing his sword,
flipped several times in the air. Aisha deflected his sword with a wave of her wand. It began to spin around her, and she screamed like a laugh.
Then the sword injured her leg.
Delphine, watching what was happening, thought this technique can't be.
Aisha fell to the ground and screamed, "What the hell did he do? He has to stop.
He can't come near her."
The protagonist swung his axe and asked her to shut up. She was making too much noise. She then fell to the ground.
Delphine asked Axe Prince,
how was he able to use that technique?
It was definitely a secret technique that an ordinary person couldn't master.
He should explain what was going on.
Axe Prince, he reached for his sword and said that he didn't care whether it was a secret technique or not. They had to fight. First letter. Part 11. That was the first time I tasted victory. Even though I had a lot of help from your friends and you, the memory of that will not remain a turning point in my life. From that day on I began to take a deeper interest in you.
In many ways the events of that day became a precious time in my life.
At that time I never thought that I would ever fall in love with you."
She replied, "You shouldn't dodge the question."
Axe Prince, the technique he used to defeat Omar was undoubtedly the Holy Kingdom's secret jujitsu,
and the strange movement of the axe he threw at Aisha.
Could it be that he was being taught in the sword circle? He thought movement in stillness. Just before he looked in surprise at Syria, who explained, simply put,
This state where movement and stillness become one. This is the basic principle of the sword circle teaching. MC asked if something like that was even possible. She answered, of course. All movement begins with stillness. He must look around carefully. He must observe the things he thought were moving, and the things he thought were still. Only when he begins to feel it as one can he truly take the first step towards movement in stillness. He asked, so how can he do this in the present tense? He thought, why does he remember this? Then he held the sword out in front of him, and said that he did not think so. Perhaps she was just imagining things. Lady Delphine, she drawing her sword from its sheath, said teaching sword circle techniques to outsiders is forbidden. So obviously there was no way he could have learned this legitimately. But he assumed she was imagining things. Maybe he just didn't want to tell her how he acquired these skills. She held her sword out in front of her and said, if that was the case, then she would just have to make him spill it all. After that she ran into the attack, striking him several times at once. The protagonist moved to the side, holding his sword out in front of him, blocking her blows, and thought, damn, he can't fight with one hand. He gritted his teeth and dodged another blow. Delphine screamed he would never win if he just ran away. She charged in front of her again. MC stepped back and then threw his sword forward straight at Delphine. The sword flew past and she said, Axe Prince, his intentions are obvious. At that moment the sword started spinning around her. The protagonist charged in, swinging his axe. She uttered like a lion's claws. Several paths are drawn at the same time. Golden Lion soared with that. She sent an attack forward. Many flashes of energy scattered across the field. Then she asked, so what? He thinks he can defeat her. The Axe Prince in response. He sneered and said, oh shit. He will crush her, she must attack. After a while she thought in surprise. What the Golden Lion sword is. A technique that mixes feints and real attacks. And it is incredibly difficult to counter. With his level of skill, he should not be able to distinguish between real strikes and fake ones, and yet his spirit has not fallen at all. She uttered, since he does not look worried at all. It only makes her want to mock him even more. With that she threw several strikes. The protagonist jumped to the side and dodged it. She thought, so even if he is unable to defeat her, he can still dodge her attacks. However, his awareness of the surroundings is surprisingly sharp. She furrowed her brows and said, what a pity, how long does he plan to stall for time? Well, it's not like he can continue to dodge now. It's not like he can continue to dodge now. Where had he heard something like that before? The phrase popped into his head. He dodged the inevitable attack. It was as if the space itself around him was distorted. This really impressive space and orientation. Did he start studying this Jan? What if he applied topology to swordsmanship? He thought topology in space and movement in stillness. Okay, he'll do it. After that he threw his axe forward. Delphine threw it aside and shouted. Was he so desperate that he threw away his only weapon? He thought, desperate. That's not it. He doesn't have the talent to bend his body like a magical beast, so he'll have to bend something else. After that he ran forward. Delphine extended her sword in front of her and prepared to attack. She thought, it's okay. He's unarmed the next second. He was right next to her and said, Lady Delphine, this time victory is definitely his. He put her own dagger to her neck and she looked at it sighing. She replied that she had no choice but to admit it. She lost Prince of the Axe. With that she raised her hands and then, reaching for the dagger, said that she couldn't believe that her first loss was to some nobody. She swears on the honor of the Yadina house. She will quietly retreat. She congratulates you on your victory, Prince. Before she could finish, MC plunged the dagger into her shoulder and told her not to end it like this. This is just the beginning. She cried out in pain and he said,
In this world the strongest survive right.
Blood was running down her arm. She thought, she can't wield a sword with her hands like that. She asked what he was planning. Attacking someone who had surrendered was dishonorable. He pulled out a dagger and said, whatever. They still had something to settle. Didn't they? She cried out in confusion. What did that even mean? He asked her to apologize to Syria for bullying her and hurting her. She wondered. Apologize? Why should she apologize for doing everything necessary to win? The protagonist took the axe and answered. Because if she didn't apologize, he would kill her. If she just apologized, they would think everything was settled honestly. He even forgave it easily. Didn't she think so? She thought. This is not a simple threat. This is the forest. Getting away with it would be easy. Even if she fought with both her arms damaged, she would definitely lose. And then she sighed and said, I see it. Seems like she's in a situation where she's pitifully begging for her life, right? He replied that it's all just for the sake of survival. She gritted her teeth and then looked at her sister and said, she's so sorry. She apologizes for hurting them and trying to steal their trophy. As for her Syria, she's the one who spread rumors about her mother and caused the bullying. This is all her doing. She's so sorry, Syria. She'll stop. And then she turned to the protagonist and asked, is everything okay now? She thought it was a pretty good apology. He put the tip of the axe to her neck and she was surprised. What's wrong? It's not like he's going to say she wasn't sincere or anything, right? He replied that that wasn't his intention. He just wanted to make sure that if Eurydice's house got in their way, because of this they would have to throw her to the beasts to be fed. She understood what he meant, right? She replied that she understood. First letter, part 12. The moon was already setting. I will finish quickly. It was nice to remember those precious moments with you. The barren winter has passed and the sad spring has come. It has been a long time since the last winter snow disappeared, but my heart yearning for you does not melt even under the spring sun. I look forward to seeing you tonight, Jan. No, my dear Jan. Tonight you will come to me again in my dreams after a while. Victor, standing on the stage, said, Dear junior members of the Academy, it is finally time to announce the winning team of this year's hunting festival. At this moment one of the students, turning to a comrade, said, Come on, because of him they are late. He turned around and told him to relax. With a smile he was almost certain that Delphine was the winner. He was surprised what wasn't. Her team evacuated. He hadn't heard about it. He asked then who won. Victor said, Over 500 students participated in the festival this year, and they all showed results that exceeded their expectations. However, none of their achievements compared to the adventure of these people. This year's hunting festival involved an extremely dangerous situation. If things had gone differently, many people could have become victims of it. The student asked, What is he talking about? He continued, Fortunately, thanks to some brave students who put their lives on the line, this serious threat was eliminated. Behind him was the defeated monster. And he added he expressed his deepest gratitude to them. He will now name them in order. 4th year magic student Elsie. 2nd year night student Celine. 2nd year fencing student Syria. And finally the representative of their team. At this moment the saint spoke. Even though she told him not to get hurt anymore, no matter what the announcer said. 3rd year fencing student Jan. All 4 of them will receive a vial of dragon blood, as a reward for what they did. The students were surprised. A vial of dragon blood, each the treasured items of the imperial family. It makes you envious, but what about their appearance? Some battered ones, Victor added. And lastly, they will also be given the right to process the body of the magical beast. He then turned to the protagonist and said that he can expect to receive at least 10,000 gold from him. He thought 10,000 gold. He would rather use it as an offering to save Emma, but the beast was brought down by all of them together. He can't keep it all for himself. He should talk to the others and explain. He looked at the beast, and at that moment, one of his team members came up and said that he was the one who deserved the most praise, so he could do whatever he wanted with it. Elsie put her finger forward and said, Ranella wouldn't give up her pride for a few gold coins. Syria said Elsie was right. She would leave it to him too. Mentor Celine came closer and said, getting dragon blood was enough for her, so he could do whatever he wanted with it. Winning the hunting festival was already
like a dream come true for her.
He asked, are they sure?
Then she was surprised. He said that with such a generous offering, she could cure Emma right. She looked at the monster in surprise. Bright flashes of fireworks exploded in the sky. Saint smiled and put her hand to her chest saying, "May God bless him for his good deeds." MC smiled happily. And so the curtain fell on the drawn-out hunting festival. After a while the saint said that Emma's treatment would begin by the end of tomorrow, so please he didn't have to worry. Mr. Jan in return. He thanked her for her concern. And she added that more importantly, he really over-exerted himself this time. She did her best, but his arm, it had gotten to the point where it was almost permanently damaged. He looked at his fist and said, well, his reflexes were a little slower now, but he was prepared for it. Even if he couldn't swing his sword as smoothly as before, it would all be worth it if he could save Emma. He thought besides, if more people died he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. She said, wanting to save her even at the cost of his own life. She was a little jealous. He looked at her in surprise, and she added she thought that he was just that kind of person. After that she extended the blood crystal to his hand and said, let it be their secret. He was surprised when a magical aura enveloped his hand. After that the saint said that she was done. He shouted in surprise. Didn't she say that it was especially valuable and that even she, a saint, couldn't use it lightly? She smiled shyly and confirmed it, saying, therefore it is a secret. He replied, okay. He didn't see anything. She said, that's great, come on. He should go to his party. She's sure everyone is waiting for him. He thanked her and then walked in the opposite direction. She looked after him and said, may God's blessing always be with him. Meanwhile Elsie, holding a mug of drink, shouted, another mug for each, right? The protagonist, reaching for his inside pocket, said that he still can't get used to this combination, no matter how many times he has seen it. Then he looked at his friend and asked, this is the winner's table. What is he doing here? Leto smiled and said, come on, he's really going to leave him out. Just because he participated in the hunting festival, they should let him join in the fun too. With graduation and the sorting coming up, it's going to be damn hard to get everyone together. MC said he thought he was right. The swordsman should start getting into shape. At that moment, Syria came up to him and blushed with embarrassment and shouted, they should talk, just the two of them. He looked surprised and then said, okay. They can go somewhere else. They walked away and he said, they won. Syria. Did she feel any relief now? She replied that she wasn't sure. Even though they won the hunting festival, it was him, the mentor, who defeated her sister in a sword fight. He said, but even so, she showed that she was no longer weak. He asked if this meant that she would stop having nightmares now. He said that he couldn't answer that question. But one thing was for sure. Syria, she wouldn't worry too much anymore. She looked down sheepishly and said, mentor. She had something to tell him. He thought, really? She then bowed and shouted, thank you so much, mentor. All thanks to his help. He thought she just wanted to say thank you. He thought it was normal for her to worry so much over just saying thanks. She then added, she was able to learn a lot just by spending time with him. He reached into his inside pocket and thought, a month ago they were definitely just acquaintances, but now he had achieved. When he sees that this behavior is very similar to her, he took out a necklace. Syria said that she wanted to give him something, but she was afraid that he would be uncomfortable, so she didn't prepare anything special. The next second, he put the necklace on her neck and said that it was a gift. He came across it by chance and it reminded him of her, so he bought it for her. She looked at the picture of the necklace and he said it was sepia. She said her mother loved it, right? Flowers fade but a pendant lives forever. He awkwardly scratched his cheek and looked away, adding he thought it would help her worry less. He hoped she would like it. She said she liked it, mentor. She thought with all her heart. She happily said that she was delighted. At that moment Celine, clenching her fists, hid behind a tree. After a while Leto approached his friend and asked what he and Syria were talking about there. He had only been gone for a few minutes,
and he had already galloped off to his girlfriend.
He replied nothing special and they were not dating.
He added, by the way,
it seems that Saint treats him very well.
She's in love with him, isn't she?
The protagonist gave him the middle finger and told him to stop talking nonsense, idiot.
He was drunk, wasn't he? He should go somewhere else.
He replied that he was serious.
If he continued like this,
all the girls in the academy would fall in love with him.
He replied that he shouldn't be stupid. He should go home and sleep soundly.
After that he sat down on his bed and thought.
No matter how he thought about it,
the only one who seemed to be suitable for him was Syria.
Was he going to fall in love one day, Syria? He lay down on his bed and thought about how he should feel about her.
Now he began to have a dream. He approached the girl. She remarked that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. It was an honor for her to meet again.
He asked how things were on the Eastern Front.
She replied that the situation, nothing had changed while they were running out of soldiers. The number of enemies was growing every day.
They had long since reached their limit. It would be different if they were at least properly supplied, but they are not. The situation is only getting worse.
The protagonist said that he is doing the best he can in the capital. But as far as she knows, this situation on the western and northern fronts is also.
Then the girl pointed her finger behind him. He turned around and she said,
Delphi Ram is approaching. He was surprised.
What is this? She said.
They cannot hold out much longer. In the present tense.
He sat up abruptly in bed and asked why he keeps having this dream. He is starting to get used to it.
Taking a bottle of water, he said. He must have drunk too much last night.
The hangover will kill him.
Then he was surprised to see a letter on his desk and said this. First letter, part 13. Postscript 1. She heard the news
that a cat from the Holy Land
recently arrived in the imperial capital.
I do not want to interfere,
but I trust that you, my dear John,
not betray my trust if this cat ever starts hitting on you.
By the way, I haven't had dinner alone with a man since
I was assigned to Erin Cope. See you soon from Cephia, who will also see you in her dreams tonight.
Looking at the letter, he wondered if there was another incident that he had received. Said the fact that you had specifically chosen the orphanage for the field mission
this year and how fiercely you had fought that day.
He asked so after the hunting festival.
There would be a field mission at the orphanage, right?
Oh wait. The letter said don't be careless just because we are far away.
God is always watching over the world.
If you cheat, punishment will come soon. From Lucy with love from far away. The second day of the month of the wheel. Year 571 of the imperial calendar.
He thought Lucia.
Not Scyphia but Lucia. What kind of bastard was he destined to become? Let me summarize what he knew so far. First, if the calendar turned over on its own, it means he probably lost his memory again. First, it seems like he drank the prize for winning the hunting festival. Dragon's blood, it's one of the best elixirs in the world.
The amount of mana in his body more than doubled.
It overwhelmed him like he was standing under a raging waterfall.
Wait, if it's been a long time. Maybe Emma woke up after a while.
He knocked on the door and said Saint. It's he thought, since no one was staring at him. Maybe nothing strange happened
this time. Well,
if that's the case, then it's just a replacement. After that he opened the door. But the next second an attack came flying at him. He tried to block the attack, thought, what's wrong? He swung his sword and asked, what the hell? Urine, throwing his sword over his shoulder. Noticed that he was his usual weakling again. The protagonist looked at him in confusion, and put his hand to the wound on his cheek, thinking, it seems like something did happen after all. After a while they were sitting at the table.
MC silently looked away and thought,
there were traces of a fight all over the living room.
If the mess hasn't been cleaned up yet, it must have happened recently. Maybe he did it, the saint said.
And so he doesn't remember anything that happened last week. He replied that it was true. She laughed and, leaning her hands on the table, was indignant.
He wants her to believe this. He thought, but it's true.
He said that he swears to God it's not a lie.
He really doesn't remember. She said so he's playing dumb.
She sees what's going on, Mr. Jam.
If this is classified information, then so be it. He wants to say that she should just forget about what happened the other day, and reveal the information seriously. How important is this organization? He thought classified information organization. What does this mean after that? The saint snapped her fingers and documents landed on the table. She said, here is a list of orphanages that are having difficulty, despite receiving aid from the holy nation. He thought, why did he ask that? Wait, orphanages. He said he would put it to good use, saint. She asked what he planned to use it for. He replied that he didn't know. She walked closer and asked. So he meant that she didn't need to know, right? Walking further and turning around, she added all the kindness she had shown him until now was in vain. She ended here after that. She headed towards the exit. The protagonist looked after her and thought, what the hell happened for the saint to act like this? And then Yurin called out to him and said, it seems like someone has possessed him. Yes, if he doesn't remember a part of his life, that would explain it. His eyes were different and he was much stronger than usual. He thought, was he stronger? So he had seen him fight. Then he asked Yurin, was he the one who made a mess here, right? He thought about it and then asked. He doesn't even remember how he injured his shoulder. The protagonist awkwardly confirmed this, and asked him to tell him what happened. He replied of course he would tell him in detail. He didn't know why he and the saint were here. By the time he arrived, the atmosphere was already strange. Then the MC asked, why was Yurin here? The saint said her apologies. Mr. Jan, because of her position, it was difficult for them to meet alone. He said that in that case, they should let him get straight to the point. Could she please give him information about orphanages located in the East that were having financial difficulties, despite receiving support from the Saint Nation? She said that she was sorry, but no matter how close they were, he couldn't pass on inside information about the Holy Nation. He asked if Archbishop Andal was doing well. The saint asked in surprise, why was he suddenly talking about him? Replied, that he had heard that some forces were working to overthrow him. If someone was trying to overthrow the conservative archbishop, it wouldn't be fair to assume that someone from the progressive faction had made a move, but he could turn a blind eye to it. If she gave him information about the orphanages, she furrowed her brows. Yurin looked at her and thought that she had recently started using the archbishop's corruption to try to overthrow him. This was supposed to be a closely guarded secret. So how did he know everything? Just how? No. It didn't matter now. If they weren't careful, all their plans could go down the drain. It's not just Jan. They have to find everyone who leaked even a tiny bit of information, and stop them from spreading it further, even if it means using force. The protagonist then took a sip of his drink and sighed, telling them to attack the next second. Yurin jumped straight at him. Swinging his weapon, the protagonist threw the cup forward. Yurin thought with his reaction he shouldn't have time to jump back, but MC attacked him with an axe in lightning speed. Yurin, trying to dodge, thought his balance, and then he parried another attack from the protagonist. The protagonist swung his axe again. He thought, damn, he's exposed. His axe is shorter. He's faster. He can't match his speed. He tried to defend himself, and then the saint shouted, Yurin. The protagonist turned his gaze to her and then parried Yurin's attack. He thought the saint's support is as good as always. Then Yurin struck again and shouted. He couldn't dodge it the next second. Yurin was surprised. He thought everything is fine. He can block. Then the axe suddenly fell on his shoulder and he shouted, this is impossible. A circle of swords. Second letter, first part, my favorite. Jan Porkis, have you ever thought about love? I don't know if it's because I'm in a new relationship or because I broke up with the love of my life a few months ago, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately. I think love is like a tree. You can't see it until it sprouts, and then it keeps spreading until it completely takes over your heart. After that, the protagonist delivered another blow to Yurin's body. He screamed in pain, grinding his teeth. He thought, damn, he can't fight with such a hand. The next second the saint entered the fight, concentrating energy in her fist. She attacked forward. She tried to strike again and again, but the protagonist moved back. Yurin thought even seeing the saint using the Saint Nation's jujitsu doesn't surprise him. Does he know about this too? The next second MC tripped her and grabbed her arm, throwing her to the ground. Yurin thought in surprise. Wasn't that the Saint Nation's secret technique? The moon reversal, he shouted. Saint. Is everything okay? Does he think he can get away with what he did to the saint? The protagonist turned his gaze to him and said that, if he didn't want him to continue, he should shut his damn mouth. The saint turned her gaze to him and asked, who is he? Why is he doing this? He was surprised him walking forward. He sat down on a chair and said that he is Jan Perkis. The saint shouted that she didn't mean it that way. She's asking who he really is. Uran added. The technique he just used was undoubtedly a secret technique that came from the Saint Nation. And moving the axe at that angle, that was a secret skill of the sword circle, right? The techniques he used are not accessible to outsiders. Of course it's impossible for one person to use both. The saint held her injured shoulder as she stood up and said that he was right. He had better be honest. She has enough political power to execute most of the nobles. Protagonist waved his finger. The next second the saint shouted, who on earth is he? The next second she noticed the writing on the wall. It said dragon. She shouted in surprise. Is that a scripture of dragon blood? Is he related to the imperial family? Yurin thought, a scripture of dragon blood. They say that the scripture can be used immediately when it is given to you, even if you don't understand jujitsu. But this is the secret imperial magic. This should only be given to members of the intelligence department, or the imperial guard. So using it means that he is related to the imperial family, and that he is related to the imperial family. In that case, it is no wonder that he knows secret techniques, and has information about the archbishop. That is how strong the imperial family is. Protagonist then said it would have been much easier if she had agreed to pass on the information right away, but she refused to cooperate and made things difficult. She asked the one asking for help, wounds her knight and breaks her arm. If she had as many guards as her predecessor, he would not have gotten away with it. The protagonist, hitting his finger on his knee, asked, really? She thinks that would have changed anything. She knows that if he wanted to, he could burn this place down in an instant, right? The outcome has already been decided. So she should stop throwing a tantrum. She said okay. In exchange for her cooperation. Please, he must turn a blind eye to the situation with the archbishop, he said, shaking hands. Then he walked up to Yurin and pulled out the weapon from his body, sighed in pain and sank to the ground. The saintess looked after the lead hero. He turned around and asked, does she find this humiliating? They must obey without objection. In the present, MC thought uncomfortably, someone who knows both the sword
circle and the secret techniques of the Saint Nation,
and who is even granted the secret technique of the imperial family, possessed him. Why? He's just an ordinary guy. Yurin put his hand on his shoulder and said, although this is a little disappointing, Dan, right now, although a weak fool is quite interesting. Then he waved his hand and said that they will see each other. He should not let any existences into his body, okay? He replied, of course they will see each other. Oh, that's right, Yurin. But the door had already closed behind him and he said and left. Then he thought, it can't be helped. He'll probably deal with this first. He'll accept the assignment from the orphanage listed in the documents, and go there to do a field mission instead of the final exam. The first thing he needs to do is look at the bulletin board with the tasks. After a while he came to the right place and thought, everyone is carefully considering which task to choose, which is logical, since the number of points received depends on the difficulty level. If you choose a task with a high difficulty, there's a high probability of failure. So many want to choose a safe one that will give a good result. He never cared about his grades, so these tasks do not bother him. The one he needs will be sent to the east of the continent, and it is also sponsored by a holy nation. And among this, he needs to find something related to financial difficulties. Then he noticed one of the ads. It said the client is the Guildford Orphanage. Request reconnaissance and extermination of monsters. Reward 25 gold. Estimated difficulty, low to moderate. Magical beasts have appeared in the forests surrounding the orphanage. He thought the estimated difficulty was low, as were the number of points and rewards awarded. This was definitely a quest that no one else would even consider. At first glance, it seemed like it was just a monster extermination quest, but the letter definitely said that they had ambushed and destroyed the nest. He thought he would understand what that meant when he got there. He folded the letter a few times and put it in his inside pocket, thinking that now that he had decided which request he would take, all that was left was to gather the party members. It would be easy to work together with his team.
From the hunting festival.
But first and second years weren't allowed to do field quests, so Celine and Saria were out. However, Elsie was a third year. So who else could he take? Urin would be good, but he was busy guarding the saint. I would like to have another swordsman. Although it is a bit sad how limited his circle of acquaintances is. To begin with, there's only about a week left. He needs to quickly decide on comrades. But no one comes to mind. He scratched his cheek, and the next second, Leto grabbed his hand and pulled him to the side. He thought in surprise Leto. His comrade pinned him to the wall and looked at his face thoughtfully. Then he smiled and said, "Ah. That is the Jan he knows," he asked. "Does he know any other Jan?" He asked back. Like one who looks exactly like him said that he lost his memory again. Right, that means he was possessed again. The protagonist thought that Urin said the same thing. Then he asked why such a directness. Did something happen? He confirmed it. He talked to him for a while. Or rather, he talked to the future him who took his appearance. MC was surprised. Second letter. Second part, of course. I'm talking about you. I still get turned on when I think about how absent-mindedly you acted when you flirted with the naive me. Let's be honest, you did it on purpose. Didn't you? Even your training ground at the orphanage is suspicious. Although you were asked to conduct reconnaissance and eliminate nearby monsters. But there were many other places, including the Perkis Estate village back then. He also pinned him against the wall. He asked who he was. He asked who he was. Jan Parkis, of course. What was he doing? Leading him to this alley and suddenly asking him such a thing. Leto said not to be ridiculous. His Jan is not as collected as him and looks much stupider. He answered right. He's definitely not the Jan he knows. But he is someone who came from a faraway place. However, there is still no doubt about the fact that he is Jan. Leto asked, so he claims to be Jan, right? How old was Celine the last time she wet the bed? He answered 12. But Celine would dispute his answer little. Asked why he and Ariel broke up in their second year. He answered because he got caught cheating on her with her sister. However, Ariel was so embarrassed that it didn't become a rumor. He asked how much money he lost gambling when he first entered. He answered he told him that he spent 2 years of allowance. So about 200 gold, Leto thought. Even though he was asking embarrassing things that only he and Jan would know, he still managed to answer everything. Then he said that time Jan suddenly started acting weird. He claimed to have received a letter from the future, although he is not creative enough to come up with something like that. Is he really from the future? He remained silent. And Leto clenched his fist and said that he knew something was wrong, but he swung his fist and shouted. What is he going to do with his body? While future Jan is possessing present Jan's body, present Jan's personality disappears, which is why he loses his memory after being possessed. In other words, his friend is now possessed by future Jan. Leto yelled, of course he's angry. He shouldn't take it personally, idiot. He should just shut up and get out. The protagonist held his arms and told him not to worry. He won't be here for long. He's just doing what the circumstances call for. Now Leto turned around and yelled. How many times have these circumstances led to Jan almost dying? How much longer do they have to deal with this? He replied, if he doesn't do this, everyone will die. Leto was surprised. And then MC let him go and said he was glad they met. After that he walked in the opposite direction. And Leto thought that he couldn't just let him go. He should at least ask why he was possessing him. Then he asked why he had to go so far. Why did he of all people have to go back to the past? He thought there must be something that could stop these possessions. He answered because he had failed. The present protagonist wondered. What did he mean? Was he from the future different from the present him?
Leto Saink
Folded his arms and said, he always gets hung up on the strangest things. He would explain it visually. So he should pay attention. He concentrated the fire energy on the tip of his finger, and told him to imagine the place where future Jan came from. Place where a huge fire broke out and many people died. If he possessed him and then prevented that fire, then he would continue to live in the future, where that disaster never happened. Right now the question is, where does he think Jan, who possessed him, is returning to? He replied confusedly, isn't he returning to the original future? He said that's right. Should return to the future where the disaster did happen, and when that happens he and Jan, who possessed him, they will become completely separate beings. They will both have completely different fates, and they will become two completely different people, sharing only one common past. MC, smiling, said that there is still something he does not understand. The future that was described in the letter was peaceful and happy. It was not some future where all of humanity was destroyed. Like he said, Leto said. There is a simple explanation. This letter must have come from a version of the future that was already changed, the future from which the letter was sent, and the future of the person who possessed it, are not necessarily the same. Time has already been changed once. So there is a chance that it can be done again. The protagonist thought in surprise. Wait, if that's true, then from which future did the dream come? If each letter is from a different lover, does that mean each future is different? Oh God! How many different futures are trying to stop him? Leto added, and there's something he hasn't mentioned yet. He left and went into the forest. Sure, he did something, but he hasn't heard any specific rumors yet. The protagonist wondered if there was something else he needed to do, that he didn't know about. He asked, did he say the forest? His companion confirmed it. The southern forest where the hunting festival was held. He specified the southern forest. What about Emma? Leto said. Emma. Oh yeah. He doesn't remember anything that happened last week in Emma. After a while the protagonist persistently knocked on the door. Emma said, please. He needs to wait a minute. Then she opened the door and asked,
후주되어 오젠.
He smiled and asked, was she discharged? She said of course she was. So why shouldn't he come in? He agreed as he walked in. He scratched his head and asked, was she feeling well? He had some business to do. He was apologizing for being late. She asked what was he saying. They had met before, his eyes were like that. She shouldn't thank the current him. She should thank the him who would come next time. Didn't he remember saying that? He was surprised, right? And then she took his hands and said, thank you very much for saving her. She heard that he had done everything for her. His giving up the monster to save her was worth more than 10,000 gold. How could she ever repay him? He looked away and awkwardly scratched the back of his head, and told her not to worry about it. She didn't need to repay him. She shouted of course she would worry about it. She looked down and trembled all over and asked what she should do. Should she become the personal alchemist of the Perkins house? How could she repay him? MC looked at her and thought, damn, he did it just to ease his guilt. But it ended up being a burden for Emma. Then he told her to live. She looked at him in surprise, and he added, she should continue to live her normal life, like in her dream. She must create potions that will prevent herbalists from getting hurt. She should earn money. She should graduate from the academy, and live a happy life with her father. That's how she can repay him. Emma, she smiled and then laughed. He wondered why she was laughing. She wiped a tear from her face and said, it's just so like him, Jan. That's why she laughed. Stupid wimp. He should continue to act like this. And one day a girl like her will take advantage of him. He asked, was that supposed to be an insult? She then said, well, if that's what he wants, then she'll do as he says and live a good life to repay the favor. Well then, is there anything she can help him with? With that she leaned down looking into his eyes, and he said about that she remembered what they talked about being able to send letters from the future. She confirmed it. Why was he so interested in that? Said he read a book and was interested. It also said that not only letters, but even souls can travel to the past. She thought about it and then said, she said that such a thing was completely impossible. That might not be entirely true. If it really was possible, she could think of 2 explanations. He clarified 2. She replied the extinction of humanity or the destruction of Delphiram. The protagonist asked in surprise. The extinction of humanity.